session. It is Tuesday, September 6th, 2022. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Nierenheim.
Here.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Here.
Councilmember Horvath. Here. Councilmember Obaji, absent. Councilmember MD. Here. Mayor Brand.
Here. Thank you, Your Honor. Do we have any announcements from closed session?
No announcements other than the fact that Lisa Bond, who I announced earlier as being a part of items F5 and F7, did not participate today.
Okay.
And Mr. Councilman Obaji and I were there. We were not here.
That's correct. Councilwoman MD and Councilman Obaji were also participants.
Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to regular session.
So move.
Is there a second? Okay, motion by Councilmember MD, second by Councilmember Horvath. Any objections? All right, now I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of the City Council. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Nierenheim.
Here.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Here.
Councilmember Horvath.
Here.
Councilmember Obaji, absent. Councilmember MD.
Here.
Mayor Brand.
Here. Let's all rise and salute the flag and take a moment of silence. Okay, ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, we got a special announcement to make tonight, so if Interim Chief Pat come join us, and wife Jeannie, and City Manager Mike Watansky. Welcome, everybody. We have the pleasure of welcoming our new Interim Chief, Pat Butler. He's got quite an extensive experience. Chief Butler comes to the Los Angeles City Fire Department with 31 years of service under his belt. Served a number of technical administrative roles, including Chief of Special Operations, this is a long list, Chief of Strategic Planning and Policy Analysis, Commander of the Arson Counterterrorism Unit, Commander of the LAFD Homeland Security Division, Commander of Air Operations, Captain of Fireboat 2, Investigator of Internal Affairs, watch out for that one, Commander of the LA Fire Department Marine Unit. He served 22 years as a reserve detective with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Holds a doctorate degree from the University of Southern California Price School of Public Policy, master's degree to Security Studies and Homeland Defense, and a bachelor's degree in Criminal Justice Management. Doesn't stop there. He graduated from West Point Leadership Program and the USC Viterbi. Never heard of that? School of Aviation Safety and Security. He's a Harvard Fellow and studies as a Senior Executive Fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Speaks fluent Spanish. Serves on the UCLA Latino Policy and Politics Initiative. Did we leave anything out? Anyway, I think we have a fire chief. And I'd like to let our city manager, Mike Watansky, say a few words. Mike.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and I think you said quite a bit. Pat has been a welcome addition to our executive team. We're pleased to have him here today. This is a bit ceremonial. He was sworn in early last week, and he's already hit the ground running. Since he's been here, we've had 2 strategic planning sessions, a pancake breakfast led by the department, which was fantastic, and an emergency event this week with the addition of our cooling centers and bringing together our team as a preparedness activity. So Pat has been fantastic. He's a great addition at a critical time in the department's history. As we've talked about in a couple of the different press releases, Pat brings just unique talents, unique skills, and I think above all else, a real personable and energetic disposition. I think that's what we're most excited about. His background speaks for itself. And we're looking forward to your leadership here. And thank you, Pat, for being here. So with that, I think before you have any remarks, we're going to go through your oath of office again for the second time. And then we'll have Jeannie go ahead and provide the pinning for us.
Thank you.
Great. You'll get the microphone.
Okay.
And then you want to face the audience. And then please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Patrick Butler,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California.
I take this obligation freely
I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well
and that I will well
and faithfully discharge
and faithfully discharge
the duties upon
the duties upon
which I'm about to enter.
which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much for that warm welcome. And before I begin, this is kind of a tradition that my wife and I had started over 32 years ago when I first came in the fire department. And oh my God. So I love you. So I'd like to kind of start out by sharing my first week experience here, and it was fantastic. And thank you, Mayor, for the warm welcome, and Mike, and to the entire council, and city attorney, and clerk. Friday night, Saturday, we started thinking about weather events that were going to impact the region, and we got together with the city planning team Saturday night to look and see how we could lean forward as a city and ensure that we're going to be safe, secure, and ensure that the residents of the city and the tourists would be 100% protected. And I reached out to my colleague, Chief Hoffman, and the team, and we put together a plan to ensure public safety. And lo and behold, Mother Nature makes us practice in Southern California, because it was 98 degrees in Redondo Beach. A 3.0 earthquake struck off the coast. 40 people were sheltered in our cooling centers, which are essentially 40 people that we would have not had to gone on calls for service. We had a couple marine rescues. Some tree branches were coming down. And we capped it off with a baby great white shark cruising around Redondo Harbor. And I kind of got home and I was like, thank you, gentlemen. I got home and I was like, wow. So fantastic. And I just want to thank the team. Thank you, Mayor, City Manager, the council, for your faith and confidence in me. And I want to send a warm welcome and send off to Chief Kaufman for his steady leadership. When I first met Chief Kaufman, and I talked to him, I called him the next day and I said, why don't I just come work for you instead? Because he is really squared away, and I just want to thank him. The Redondo Beach leadership team has been fantastic. Chief May, Chief Yang, everyone has given me a warm welcome, and Chief Smith is retiring tomorrow after 32 years. But I specifically also want to thank the civilian staff in our city who keeps essentially the lights on and keeps our reputations polished and shiny. And so I have a lot of thank yous to all the staff.
Claudia, Stella, Renee, Liz, Luke, and others if I may have missed, but without you, we can't do this. I want to thank my wife, Jeannie, of 32 years, and my daughters, who right now are in college. And if I can share a brief story, my wife's going to give me the eye. 17 years ago, I was appointed to my first command. And when I got home, I told my wife, do you know that I was just appointed as the battalion commander for Battalion 10? It's 48 square miles, got a population of 450,000, critical infrastructure, 10 fire stations. And I went on and on and on. And she set down her cup of coffee in the kitchen and she looked at me right in the eyes and she says, well, let me tell you this, Pat. In this 1,100 square foot home, I'm in charge. And that's how it's been, and that's how it should be. I want to thank the community, the firefighters, and city leadership. To the community, please know that we will continue to serve you in the level of professionalism that you have come to expect for over 125 years. The public safety in our city and all cities is a shared responsibility, and I will seek out opportunities to collaborate with the public. I want to thank our brave Redondo Beach firefighters. Please know that I'm proud to be your fire chief. I understand the complexities of your job. I spent most of my career on the front lines, and I understand what it is you go through every day and the increase of demand for service on you. I'm especially grateful to your families who sacrifice a lot for you to be here. My wife, Jeannie, and I know how that is. To the city leaders, thank you for your confidence in me. I look forward to working with you on the many initiatives that are important to the communities you represent. And for you, public office is a defining characteristic of what it means to be an elected leader. And I'm proud to be part of your team. In closing, I would like to share with you that a life of public service of over 30 years offers me a chance to pay it forward. In the early 1970s, my mom, who lives in Mexico now, where we were from, I was born here, my mom is a Mexican immigrant. We used to go to the Redondo Beach Pier in the early 70s and fish off the pier and go have seafood. And to know that the son of a Mexican immigrant would be sitting here today being the fire chief and harbor master of the same place that I used to fish as a little kid out there. And that was something that I cherish forever. I embrace this opportunity with open arms. I do so with a deep commitment to this city and the leaders. And most importantly, I expect you to hold me accountable for my job, because otherwise, without accountability, we cannot have the level of professionalism and transparency in an organization. Thank you very much for your confidence in me, and I look forward to this great adventure. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Butler. Welcome aboard. We had on the agenda a great farewell to Chief Kaufman. That's been postponed for 2 weeks. He'll be here in 2 weeks. Thank you. Okay, now to our regular order of business. Order of agenda. Any motions approved? Change?
Motions to approve the order agenda?
Second.
Okay. So the roll call, we do a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Okay. Next up, regular meeting of the Redondo Beach Housing Authority. Chairman Harding.
Actually, yeah, we got
And
announcements.
Commissioner Linus.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Announcements. Yeah, good call. Thank you.
Thank you. Council announcements. Councilmember Nierenheim.
Thank you, Mayor. I do. I have my community meeting this Saturday, actually, in person at Alta Vista, 9:30 a.m., regular time, regular place, which is always the second Saturday of the month. My online meeting is not scheduled yet, so sometime thereafter, I'm thinking around the week of the 20th, right in there. And I'm going to have a special guest at our community meeting, and it's going to be our new fire chief, interim fire chief. So you see him here once, see him here again this Saturday. So come on down. It'll be a lot to catch up on, lots gone over the last few weeks here at the council. So come on down to Alta Vista at 9:30 in the morning.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Yeah, thank you to the staff for the cooling centers. I really appreciate that very much. I know residents really needed it. It was very hot this weekend, one of the hottest days I can remember. The next District 2 community meeting will be held 2 weeks from tomorrow night. That'll be September the 21st, 6 p.m. on Zoom. Go to my city page to register for the Zoom call. The theme or topic will be the proposed dog run at Zuliger Park. That'll be quite an interesting evening. And we'll be joined by Mike Klein from Public Works again to talk about the proposed dog run. And I'd love to hear from folks both for and against. So please come, and we'd like to hear from you. So thank you very much.
Councilmember Horvath.
Yep, this month's community meeting, I'm not quite sure when it's going to be because kids' sports have started up, and that means our schedules are pretty crazy. But with that said, ideally it'll be in the third week, either on the Thursday or the Saturday, and I will have more information by our next meeting.
Okay. Councilmember Imdy.
No, I don't have anything today. Thanks.
I'd like to point out there's a great art show going on at the Historical Library down in Veterans Park. Thank you, Cal 101. This is their 11th exhibition. It's a fantastic show. It's operating this coming Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and the following Friday and Sunday. And it's just a fantastic show. It's an incredible facility. I want to thank staff, Mike Klein, Ted Simon, our whole public works staff. They did a fantastic job preparing that facility, and it's really quite something to see. It was rented out to, it was, call it subleased to private entity for over 30 years. And it's now opened back up to the public, and this is a great way to roll it out. So if you want to take in some good art, take in some ocean view, and yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful event. So come on down. It's not open every day. It's noon to, do you have that right? It's, hang on a second, noon to 7 p.m. Next September 9th, 10th, and 11th, and then the following weekend, September 16th, 17th, and 18th, noon to 7. So if you got time, make it down there. Okay. With that, now we'll move on to blue folder items. We have some blue folder items to admit.
Yes.
Approve the order agenda for the financing authority, actually.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
actually, we need to do agency recess.
Oh, sorry, I jumped ahead. Did we approve the order of agenda, or did we interrupt that?
We did.
Okay.
We did, so-
Let's go under agency recess,
roll
regular
call
meeting
yet.
of the Redondo Beach Housing Authority. Sorry, Cameron. We got there.
Oh, I need to do roll call.
roll call for housing authority.
So
Roll
member
call, please.
Nierenheim,
Here.
member Lowenstein,
Here.
member Horvath. Here. Member Obaji absent, member MD,
Here.
Commissioner Linez,
Here.
Commissioner Vogelslang absent, Chairman Brennan.
Here, thank you.
Okay, right.
Okay, now Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We actually have our housing supervisor, Angelica Zavala, here with us tonight that'll give the presentation.
We need to do consent calendar. There's no blue items for this.
Oh,
Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar. items.
okay, any objections? Okay, so ordered.
And then any public participation on non-agenda items.
Yeah. Any
Any cards?
comments
No
on that?
cards, no comments.
Zoom?
Okay. All right,
Comments? Nope.
all right.
Okay, so now,
Sorry, let me pull this up here.
okay,
Give me just a second here. This is not pulling up here. Wait a minute here.
Wait, do you have a staff? You don't have anything for the financing?
It's just a quarterly update, so.
New business.
Okay,
Oh, this is housing.
here we go.
Housing, yeah.
Yep. So on consent calendar,
We did that. So number 9.
public participation on non-agenda items, no agenda items, public hearings, old business, new business, status report of Section 8 and Fair Housing Program.
Thank you. So as I mentioned before, our housing supervisor, Angelica Zavala, is here tonight, and she'll give the quarterly update for you. And so I'll
Thank
turn
you.
it over to her. Angelica.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Just waiting for the presentation to populate.
Oh, sorry. You gotta let me know. Thank you.
Okay, so this is a quarterly status report of the City of Redondo Beach and the Fair Housing Programs for the months of June, July, and August of 2022. We currently have 431 families on our program, with the majority, 3/4, being either seniors or disabled. Our occupancy goal, as outlined in our 5-year and our 1-year agency plan, is to house 633 families in Redondo Beach. The challenges that we face to reaching our goal continue to be the high rising rents, their low vacancies here in Redondo Beach, negative stereotypes about our program, and not enough landlords that want to participate. The table on screen reflects the Section 8 activity over the last 3 months. We were able to execute 6 contracts. We renewed 123 leases. We had 14 families that were permanently taken off the program, mostly being caused by death. The average monthly housing payment is $1,281, and the amount that was dispersed in housing assistance payments over the last 3 months was $1.689 million. The following are funding highlights in regards to the Section 8 program. In May of this year, the Housing Authority received its calendar year 2022 funding award letter. Our Housing Choice Voucher Program and our VASH program continue to be fully funded. Additionally, we receive enough funding to cover all of our administrative expenses. In May of 2021, HUD allocated the City of Redondo Beach 29 emergency housing vouchers. The Housing Authority continues to work with LASA for referrals. It's been very challenging. We've been able to lease 4 families, and hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have a couple more. And HUD continues to recognize RBHA as a high-performing agency. Another highlight for us is the HUD VASH program, which is permanent housing for homeless veterans. We have a total of 32 veterans housed in Redondo Beach under the HUD VASH program. Our goal is to utilize all 40 HUD VASH vouchers that were allocated to our city and hopefully be able to get more vouchers after that. Our veterans have less of a difficult time finding housing because their payment standards are higher than just a regular Section 8 voucher. This increased payment standard, like we said, allows our veterans to secure housing easier than other Section 8 program participants. Our Section 8 waiting list was last opened in 2015. We currently have about 4,200 families on that waiting list. In July, we pulled 100 families, and out of the 100 families that we pulled, we were only able to issue about 8-9 vouchers. So next step, rather than pulling families, we're looking into purging that waiting list. Any applicant who wants to check the status of their on the waiting list should call the number on screen, 855-361-9512, or they can visit the website, www.waitlistcheck.com. The Housing Authority continues to refer any constituents in need of fair housing assistance to the Housing Rights Center. They're able to assist families with any discrimination investigations, with any mediation, landlord-tenant, or maybe tenant-tenant, or with any counseling. The Housing Rights Center, they can be reached either over the phone at 1-800-477-5977, via email at info@housingrightscenter.org, or anyone that wants to schedule an appointment can visit the website, www.housingrightscenter.org/help. This concludes my report. I'm here if anyone has any questions. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Nair.
Real quick, can you define, what's the definition of a high performing agency?
There's 14 categories that HUD measures an agency by, of which they include pulling people from the waiting list in the order that they're supposed to be pulled, doing rent comparables, calculating the rent accurately, running reports on time. It's about 14 of them. So depending on each category contains different points, and anyone that scores above, I believe a 92, 93 is a high performing agency. Right now, the last score was a 95.2. So that is why we're recognized as high performing.
Perfect. And I thought we were going to maybe possibly bring back this month report as part of this discussion here, status report of Section 8 and housing on the, you know where I'm going? No? Project Home Key on PCH and the status of Section 8 on that.
Yeah, I think the plan is September 20th to do that. Angelica, myself, Joy, and Lila were all attended 2.5, well, I attended 2 days. They attended 2.5 days of training last week on what can be done to set up a project-based voucher, what restrictions you can legally put in place, what needs to be done. One of the things that has to happen is your housing element, your administrative plan has to be modified. You know, ours doesn't currently have project-based vouchers. You can put in, the authority has a number of choices as to what you can put in there. I think on the 20th, we'll have a contract with the consultant that the housing department would like to use to help modify that housing element. So it will be coming back. It will just be 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay,
So did I anticipate it correctly?
You did exactly that. Perfect. No further questions. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Laura, go ahead.
So you said you were going to purge the list. How are you going to do that? You're not just going to wipe them out, because even though it's 8 out of 100 people, that's still over 300 people that might still be on that list that are willing to do it.
Right. So when we pull people from the waiting list, we try to reach them either by phone. Well, actually, if we first send out a letter, then if we do not hear from them, we call them. We try to call them via phone, via email. When they don't respond, that's when we we have no way of getting a hold of them. So we
So you're still going to work the list. You're just not, it's just the way you said it, you're going to purge the list. I was like, whoa, wait, you're not just going to just
What
delete
I'm
the list.
thinking of doing is sending out letters to everyone that we have on the waiting list, pretty much saying your name still is on our waiting list. If you're still interested, please contact the housing authority.
Or you'll be removed.
Exactly. And we'll
Okay.
probably do it a second time. From when we don't hear from anyone, then at that point, we will need to purge. Now, I've had families that are removed from the waiting list, and then they call us 1 year later saying, well, I never received any notice. Can you add me back in? We do not have problem adding those families back in as a one-time courtesy.
Okay, thank you.
So, yes.
Any more questions?
Are they added in back at the part of the waiting list that they left? Meaning, or
Yes,
do they go to the back of the waiting list?
yes, they are added back on with the preferences that they qualify for.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any public comments? Not seeing any.
Okay,
Entertain a motion.
and there's no
Motion to receive
Zoom,
file.
Public.
there's no Zoom or e-comments for the record.
Motion to receive and file?
Second.
No, I didn't make the motion. I did. Okay. Any objections? Okay, so ordered. Any referrals from staff or to staff, to council? Motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Okay, any objections? Okay, we're adjourned. Moving right along. Thank you. Community Financing Authority. Calling to order. Roll call, please.
Hold on 1 second. Okay. Member Nierenheim.
Here.
Member Lowenstein.
Here.
Member Horvath.
Here.
Member Obaji, absent. Member MD.
Here.
Chairman Brand.
Here, thank you. Order of agenda, a motion to,
Motion to approve order agenda.
Second.
okay, any objections? So ordered. Any blue folder items?
Not for this agency, Mayor.
Consent calendar, we have 4 items tonight on consent calendar. Anybody like to pull any consent calendar items? Any motions to approve consent calendar?
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Horvath?
Yes, sir.
Okay, second by Councilmember Nierenheim.
I
Okay,
have a quick question, actually. Check number 475, we don't have in here what it's for. Is in the amount of, hold on. Refinancing authority.
That's the minutes. That's the check we issued, I think, at the last meeting.
Yeah,
That was the
sorry.
final closeout payment. It was lower because it was the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
That's why it's different.
And what about the $8,300 check? We don't have.
Yes, it's the same, it's that reciprocity arrangement for the
Got it.
Kincaid structure. It's just the one check you're reading that's significantly lower. It's the final payment of the year when it's already been effectively trued up. At that point, it's just utilities.
Oh, got it. Okay, thank you.
okay, there's a motion and a second. Any objections?
We have no public comments. I don't know. if
Public
anybody-
comments? Okay, so ordered. Do you need to read anything, Eleanor?
None here.
Okay, great. Moving right along. Public participation on non-agenda items. Anybody like to comment on non-agenda items? Again, this is Community Financing Authority. Okay, seeing no takers. Motion to adjourn from Councilmember Horvath?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any objections? All righty, we adjourned. Moving right along. Back to your regular city council. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Nierenheim.
Here.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Here.
Councilmember Horvath.
Here.
Councilmember Obaji, absent. Councilmember MD.
Here.
Chair Brand.
Here, thank you. Now, blue folder items, the regular council meeting.
So the blue folder
What do you
items.
have, Eleanor?
H10, let's see, it's the related to the affordable housing, the sale of 27550 Artesia Boulevard, Unit 215. It's explanation and full description of documents being approved. N1, related to the measurable goals for implementation of the existing bike master plan, public communication. And 2 is the draft conceptual plan for beautification and landscape improvements on the Southern California Edison right-of-way, public communication. And N3, options to expand the installation of bike racks on commercial properties, public communication. That concludes.
Is there a motion to admit those to the record? So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember MD. Any objections? Okay, so ordered. Moving right along, consent calendar tonight, we have a long consent calendar, 24 items on consent. We normally pass these all in one motion. Any member can pull any item, anyone can speak to any item. Start with Councilmember Nierenheim. Did you want to pull any items on consent calendar?
You know, I don't want to pull anything, but I just want to make 2 quick comments on 2 different items. Items H8, which is the item regarding the turf on Aviation Field. I fully support it, and I want to make sure this report comes back, staff report, the type of turf that we're using for the discussion that we talked about, the strategic plan regarding turf and turf replacement and artificial turf. I think it's very important. This report really nails it on the head as to what we're looking for in the future. And then item H23, I just want to thank Public Works and call out to Public Works, you know, the great job that they've been doing. You know, the number one call, front lines for quality of life here in Redondo really is Public Works. And so more than happy to support them and what they're doing. And this is a big thank you from my side. So thank you. I know the residents really appreciate it, and I know that we on the council really appreciate it as well. So thank you guys, Public Works and your staff.
Okay, Councilmember Lowenstein.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Horvath.
I'd like to pull H4.4 and H21. And they could be
H4.4 and
H21.
okay.
They could be taken together.
Councilmember MD.
No, thank you.
Okay. And I'd just like to echo Councilmember Nierenheim's sentiments on the turf for Aviation Park Field. It's been 12 years. And we got another agreement with South Bay Sports. And it's worked out well with them. And we had a competing bid from the Kings, but they wanted too much use of it, put a bunch of signs. And, we've had a great relationship with SB South Bay Sports. So it's good. You're going to have a new field at Aviation Park, and it needs it bad. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to entertain all but H4.4 and H20. Oh, I'm sorry, the public comments.
I have a Zoom also.
Okay. H6, Joan Irvine.
I just want to thank the council and everybody for passing the second reading of the cannabis local control of the cannabis businesses. So thank you, everybody. I know it's been a long time. And also I want to ask everybody to make sure that they vote no during the special election on the cannabis initiative that is on that. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Joan. We really actually should have pulled it. It's a big deal. How many years did we work on that, Mike?
2.5, 3.
Yeah, so we had a special task force, worked 2.5, 3 years. Staff did a tremendous amount of work on this. We're the first city in the South Bay to have a cannabis initiative to allow stores in Redondo Beach. So yeah, there you have it. Johnson's Fedco, same issue.
Good evening, everyone. Similarly, I will echo those same thanks once again, all the years that we put into this stuff. I will ask for those that are listening to please vote no on Measure E, which is the outside initiatives measure here that would take over local control here within Redondo Beach. I also would like to formally ask the city to consider what our response will be. I understand we can't necessarily campaign on this measure, but we can put out facts. And from what I've seen with the flyers that went out this weekend that were supported by Elliott Lewis and Barry Walker on that, they are making claims that this will maintain local control in the city, that will bring in tax dollars into the city. At best, they are half-truths, if not full-out lies. And I certainly hope the city will do its part to make sure we educate our community as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a Zoom. Oh, I don't know if anybody else. Okay. I have a Zoom. Lena Carrillo. Go ahead.
Yes, hello, and good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Lena Carrillo, President of the Redondo Beach Professional and Supervisory Union. With regards to item H23, the Recruitment and Retention Bonus Program for Public Works Employees, PSA would like to voice its disappointment that only a select group of Public Works employees represented by the Teamsters Association were selected for the retention bonus, which is in essence an attendance incentive. Public Works also employs members of PSA and CEA, and they have been completely overlooked for the retention bonus, and yet they work side by side with the Teamsters employees. Although PSA recognizes the significant challenges the city has faced in keeping maintenance employees, we are disappointed that the city does not recognize the commitment it's taken from all the remaining employees to keep the department functioning. In rewarding only a select group of those employees with such a significant $20,000 attendance bonus over the next year and a half, the city is now creating discouragement amongst the remaining staff. Upon adoption of the mid-year decision package allocating funding for recruitment and retention in Public Works, PSA reached out to the city requesting to meet, since the city has experienced challenges with recruiting PSA employees in Public Works, specifically the engineering positions that are represented by PSA. PSA was told negotiations with Teamsters needed to occur first. Made sense, those positions were the priority at the time. PSA understood and we waited patiently. Once PSA was finally able to meet with the city, we were told our employees are not the problem and would not be considered for any type of bonus, including the attendance incentives. Ironic that our employees need to have an attendance problem before being recognized. We have Public Works supervisors that showed up consistently, were called back on emergencies, even though they do not receive overtime pay or even any callback bonuses, and filled in the gaps for those absent maintenance workers. They have been completely overlooked for any bonus consideration. It's short-sighted and unfair. This is a concerning precedent that council will set if it does not consider an attendance bonus for remaining city employees, even beyond the Public Works Department. To recognize only a select few and completely overlook the remainder is callous. We don't argue that there wasn't an issue that needed an immediate solution within a certain division. What we argue is that the solution will not create a greater problem with employee morale citywide. The full attendance incentive should be considered for the public works supervisors that work side by side with Teamsters. And monetary recognition to all remaining city employees should be made, even if it's only a portion of the amount given to Teamsters. It is wrong to completely overlook your remaining employees, and it will ruin morale. PSA urges you to extend the attendance bonus to remaining employees and direct Mike and Diane to enter and to meet and confer with those bargaining units on the terms. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more, Eleanor?
So that concludes. There's no e-comments.
Motion to approve consent minus those 2 pulled ones.
There's a second.
Second that.
Okay. The roll call vote. Councilmember Nairn.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Emdy.
Aye.
Councilmember Baji absent.
So H6, adopt by title only ordinance number 3240-22, an ordinance of the City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, adding Chapter 6 and Title 6 of the Redondo Beach Municipal Code to regulate commercial cannabis businesses. Adopt by title only ordinance number 3241-22, an ordinance of the City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, amending Title 10, Chapter 2, Section 10-2.1626 of the Redondo Beach Municipal Code to allow commercial cannabis activities in inland zones of the city. Adopt by title only ordinance number 3235-22, an ordinance of the City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, amending Title 10, Chapter 5, Section 10-5.1626 of the Redondo Beach Municipal Code to allow commercial cannabis activities in coastal zones of the city. H7, adopt by title only ordinance number 3237-22, an ordinance of the City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, adopting an ordinance amending Title 10, Chapter 5, Coastal Land Use, implementing ordinance pertaining to the procedures for administrative design review. H9, adopt by title only resolution number CC 2209-064, a resolution of City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, approving the filing of a claim with the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority for fiscal year 2022-2023. H12, adopt by 4/5 vote and title only resolution number CC-2209-065, a resolution of City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, authorizing a fiscal year 2022-2023 budget modification to appropriate $2,000 from the West Basin Municipal Water District water bottle filling station pilot program to the city's water bottle filling station program account. We have one more. H22, adopt by title only resolution number CC-2209-066, a resolution of City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, establishing a procedure for industrial disability retirement determinations of local safety officer employees of the Public Employees Retirement System. That completes.
Okay. Thank you, Eleanor.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, H4.4. This is approve the First Amendment to the Agreement of Los Angeles County for use of Los Angeles County official vote by mail drop boxes and for the registrar, recorder, county clerk to perform city ballot retrieval and delivery services for the city's October 19th special election in an amount not to exceed $10,000. Councilmember Horvath.
Yep, and if you want, you can pull this one with H21 together.
You want to do them together?
You can do them together.
Okay, we're also doing 21, which, I'm sorry, let me just say what this is. Approve an agreement with Hart Intercivic for purchase of tabulation and software ballot design and professional services for the October 19th special election and March 7th, 2023 general municipal election we have coming up next March, not to exceed $150,000 for the year.
Okay, and I'm just pulling these because I made a statement and I'm just remaining consistent that I will not be voting for any budgetary items specific to the special election. So that's why they're pulled. I don't need to have any further discussion on my end.
Okay, is there any public comment?
I have none here. Nope.
I've got a quick question to the city clerk on this one.
Okay.
Now that we're here and talking about this, I see in here, let me pull it up, make sure I have it correct. H21, correct? We are, I believe, buying this equipment, right? Purchasing the tabulation equipment and subscribing to the associated software, rather than doing a rental agreement, which will in itself pay for itself when the October 19th special election, March 17th general elections are concluded. So we don't have to rent this equipment anymore. We can have as many elections as we want.
Right, so for the March election, this election, we've paid for the equipment. And so going forward, we'd just be paying for the ballot design and professional services to help out with running the equipment or updating the equipment, that kind of thing. And that's it. So for the next 5 years. So we'll be saving about 50 grand each time.
They're going to be good 5 years from now? 4 years?
Yeah, well, they'll keep,
It's certified for 5 years.
right, they keep updating the software and everything, because it has to be up to the standards of the state of California.
Right. But I think that's huge to see that we're going to be able to save money by doing this and buying the software and hardware rather than leasing it out. So thank you.
Any other
Okay.
questions?
Any other comments of any kind?
I'll make a motion to approve item 4.4 and item 21.
Second.
Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Narenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath. And Councilmember Emby.
Aye.
We have no public comments, just for the record, for either one of those. Thank you.
Say that again, Eleanor?
There's no public records for either one of them.
Okay.
I mean,
All right. Okay,
comments, I'm
next on to public participation on non-agenda items. Is the opportunity for the public to speak about anything that is not on the agenda. Everybody's got 3 minutes. And anybody in the audience, feel free to come on down. Any cards, Eleanor?
I have no cards.
Anybody online?
I have no one,
Really?
no e-comments
Wow,
either.
that doesn't happen often.
I think that's.
Wait a minute, wait a minute.
What happened? It's too hot?
I know, right?
Internet,
It's nice in here. You might come and try.
I think Andy's going to speak. No.
Here, let me just check, because I just saw a new comment
Well,
come in.
it's rather shocking. Okay, moving right along then.
Wow.
We don't have any public hearings. We're going on our discussion items tonight. We have 3 discussion items. And the first one is discussion and possible action regarding measurable goals for implementation of the existing bicycle master plan and review of local travel network concepts. Ted Simon, our Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we have a couple of items here. That is a strategic plan item that we're going to be presenting to you. It's 2 components. Andy is going to be presenting the update on the status of our bicycle master plan implementation. And we have our friends and colleagues from the COG that will be talking about and presenting the LTN, the local travel network elements for the council to consider for tonight. So with that, I will turn it over to Andy and we'll start with the bicycle master plan.
Thank you very much, Ted, and good evening, Mayor and members of the council. And Eleanor, I don't know, can you put up the screen, please?
Yes.
As Ted mentioned, we have a kind of a combined couple of topics here tonight under this item. The first will be an update of the bicycle master plan, and the strategic plan item discussed potential goals, measurable goals to continue the implementation. After that, we'll be hearing from the representatives of the Southway COG on the other item. So we'll begin with a brief update on the bicycle master plan. Just a quick review here. The master plan was adopted in 2011 by the City Council and proposed over 38 miles of proposed routes throughout the city, comprised of Class 1, Class 2, Class 3 bicycle facilities, as well as bike-friendly streets. To date, we've completed just about 3.3 miles on the roads. And we, through various dedicated bike facility projects, one of which you'll hear a little bit more about, and a number of our roadway resurfacing projects that we do on a routine basis throughout the city, we are on the verge of implementing what will amount to about 2/3 of our total bicycle master plan in the next couple of years. This table was in the report, the administrative report, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of things on it. I'm showing a couple of groups of projects here. One are pending construction projects, either underway or very close to being underway, pending a Caltrans approval, that kind of thing. But we have 22 miles that are really on the verge of being completed this year or next. And these will be Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3 facility. Class 2 and Class 3 facilities throughout the city. When we complete these, we'll be about 2/3 of the way through all the proposed routes within the bike master plan. The second group in the lower part of the table there are projects that we have in design or planning, including traffic calming projects, Manhattan Beach Boulevard design, Kingsdale, and some other projects there. Really great projects coming up just a little bit further behind in the process, almost 6 miles in that group of projects. And when completed, will bring us up to about a little over 80% of the total bicycle master plan implementation. This next slide is just a kind of a visual of where these various bike routes are. The blue lines are completed projects. The orange we're calling active projects, both the planning and design and construction phases. And then the highlight here is the green lines, which is our biggest project to date in terms of implementation, our single biggest project, which is funded by a call for projects grant from Metro, which is federally funded ultimately and requires Caltrans review before we can spend any money on this. So we're in the Caltrans review process right now. We have answered all their questions. We're hoping they don't have any more, and we expect to hear from them in a month or two. Not sure with Caltrans, but our fingers are crossed for that one. All that good news is tempered a little bit by about 18% of our corridors that are what I'm calling challenging corridors. These are significant corridors, 1, 2, 3 miles through the city that are difficult. There's right-of-way issues. There are speed issues. There are competing interests in use of the right-of-way, other jurisdictions to consider. And so these are whatever the opposite of low-hanging fruit. This is the high-hanging fruit, I guess, the difficult ones to get. So we're working on the first 82% to get those done. And then meanwhile, we'll have to be having more conversations about implementing these last several corridors. So that's just the brief update about our bicycle master plan update. I know there was discussion about, or the request was about goal making for this. Some of these projects are easier to set goals than others. We have a good chunk of our projects to be completed in the next year or two has to do with work that can be done by either our crews or our hired striping contractor, which that contract will come before you guys in I think, the next meeting. And so we look forward to implementing that as quickly as we can. That might be an easy project to set goals for. More difficult ones are the ones that require Caltrans approval or folks that we don't have as much control over. So I'll leave that with you for that part of the discussion. I'm not sure if we wanted to discuss these separately or together. I'll leave that to you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I know there's one person in the audience that definitely wants to comment, so maybe we'll let the audience and public comment first and then have our comments.
I just have a real brief question there.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
The class 3 bike lane, is that Manhattan Beach Boulevard?
No, Manhattan Beach Boulevard will end up being a class 2 and a buffered class 2 in its final design.
Okay, which one is class 3? Because you mentioned class 3.
There's a lot of class 3. Class 3 is the Sharrows, so
Sure.
smaller
class
residential
1
streets.
is the one I'm thinking
Yeah,
of.
I made a mistake. We don't actually have any class 1s going in. As part of the bicycle master plan, we do have 2 projects or 1 project, extension of the North Redondo Beach Bikeway in the SE right-of-way for a couple of parcels there that don't have a bikeway in it. It's in, actually the design is complete. It's with SCE for review right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, public comment. Jim, come on down.
Yeah, I put my name for a virtual meeting. I figured I'd need to walk.
There you go.
New digs. This is quite a place. I'm impressed. I'm also impressed with the activity to take this bicycle master plan and convert it to a bicycle implementation plan. I know it takes a lot of effort, a lot of research. I really want to thank the Public Works as well as Andy. I mean, Andy put most of the time in on this thing, I think. And so thank you all for making this happen. It was this far. I can't help but say it only took 11 years to get here, but I was a lot younger in those days. Anyway, thank you though, and I really appreciate it. I hope the City Council will urge staff to implement this now. Thank you.
Thanks for all your hard work over the years. It's had a big impact.
Just so you know, Jim, the Nob Hill Road.
Yeah.
When is that going to be? It's part of the proposed?
That's part of the call for projects plan that's with Caltrans right now. So it's pending. It's on the cusp of getting there. So
Next week.
Okay, yeah, you're an optimist, I like it.
Yeah.
That's a much needed east-west
Right.
link to the bike lanes. Prioritize it.
That is actually Caltrans hang up right now, is the trees on that street, so.
Any more public comment? Eleanor? Okay. Yeah, I can speak later, Jim. We normally don't, but somebody make the motion to allow someone to speak twice. We normally, speak once.
So if anyone on Zoom
Yes,
would
you
like
can
to
speak later
please
if you want
raise your
to.
hand.
Any
Yeah,
council?
we have an e-comment. Go ahead, Vicki,
Go
if you
ahead.
can read that.
Okay, submitted by Brianna Egan. It seems every week we are hearing a new story of a person hit and seriously injured by a car while riding a bike in Redondo Beach. But Redondo is not alone in seeing tragic and preventable bike accident deaths. The city of Carlsbad recently declared a state of emergency over several bike deaths, including a young mother transporting her infant son. As part of their emergency response, Carlsbad will be fast-tracking the implementation of safer bike lanes by allocating $2 million towards traffic calming and restriping projects. I'm glad to see this timely item brought to the city council agenda tonight. We enjoy riding bikes in Redondo, and the vast majority of our community would like to see more fully protected bike lanes and car-free routes to be able to get around town with ease on a bicycle. Kids find more freedom on a bike to ride to school or to their friends' houses without needing to have an adult chauffeur them around. But it needs to be safer for them to do so. Bike lanes are far more efficient at transporting more people faster than car lanes. Just look at the crowd of bike racks at Beach Life Festival and to see that bike transportation just makes sense. Forward-thinking cities like Paris, Amsterdam, and Utrecht have miles of interconnected bike networks and happy, healthy residents. I'm urging the city council and staff to implement the bike master plan with fresh eyes without continuing to appease fast-moving heavy vehicles. This implementation needs to be coupled with traffic calming, physical barrier protection, and visibility improvement for both bicyclists and motorists. The LTN concept seems to be a network of sharrows, which are not true protection and will not mobilize micromobility nearly enough. Goals should include maximizing the number of miles of protected lanes and utilizing quick build techniques to implement this efficiency and cost effectively. CalBike has a great page on quick build bike lanes. Don't settle for less in a climate crisis. And I believe that concludes comments for this item. I'm just.
No more.
We do have one more, excuse me. Submitted by Leslie Campeggi. As with any plan, it's only as good as the education and enforcement. We must do a better job of both, especially regarding bikes and e-bikes not allowed on sidewalks. That concludes public comment on this item.
Okay. Council comments. Sorry, guys, I'm not seeing the order.
Yeah, I put my thing on, so I'll just start off.
Go ahead.
All right. First of all, can you email me, email all of us or me, a copy of the slides? I'd love to show them at my community meeting this weekend to show what we've been doing, how much, where, especially the green stuff that's coming. We get asked all the time. In fact, in the springtime, we had a bunch of people come through and ask regarding bike lanes, what we're doing, all the locations. To that effect, one of the reasons why we have this conversation has come up multiple times are the e-bikes and e-bike conversations. Can someone remind me are we having a separate conversation regarding e-bikes and, or we, regarding signage and limiting you can't limit the speed, but education speed using the bicycle lanes?
We've not yet.
Did we have a strategic plan item on this or no, or?
We don't have one on the strategic plan, and we haven't had the conversation because the e-bikes, it's not a clear e-bike or non-e-bike. There's multiple grades within the e-bikes that have varying regulations within the vehicle code. So no, we've not had that conversation at this point.
Okay. What about bike path down the beach, the portions that we do own? I mean, have you had any conversations regarding the bike path on the beach with the county? Signage, speed enforcement. I know Hermosa Beach, which owns their bike path, they're starting to do some enforcement there. Because that's more of a police item, but they're not here, it's fine. But it's important because as we build this out, which is great, there's a lot of kids with the e-bikes right now, and they're everywhere. And they're driving around without pedaling on the e-bikes, and it's become the new thing. So I think it's just important that we have that a part of the conversation. So moving forward, whatever we do, have that in the back of your mind, and whatever you need conversation from the council wise, whether it's signage, directional, or we need to change what we're doing. I think it'd be whatever needs to be pertinent there. Yeah, there's a lot of bikes in the Riviera Village, no new bikes. We'll get to that next item with the bike parking. But other than that, thank you. Are you looking for direction out of us in terms of what we need to get done?
The strategic plan just called for any discussion on setting goals, so I'll leave that. We didn't have necessarily a recommendation at this point.
Kind of a keep on going.
Kind of a keep on going, yeah, exactly.
But you've just showed the bicycle plan. What about the LTN?
We're about to have that
I was
conversation.
gonna say, wait a minute, we're not done. Okay.
Coming up. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Horvath.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on Councilmember Narenheim's comments, but I'm going to direct this out to you, Jim, because we talked about the Streets for All program in recent meetings and really needing a phase 2 on that, and that's a program with the Beach City Health District in coordination with the cycling clubs and the PD and the school district. And Jim, you guys have done those great educational classes for kids, at the schools. And I think to Councilmember Narenheim's point, what we're definitely missing here is we got a lot of people buying e-bikes for their kids, and there's no educational component around it. There's no those things are like mopeds in a sense, right? And you need a license to ride a moped or a motorcycle, but you don't need a license to ride an e-bike. And, what I notice when I'm driving the kids to school or around the neighborhood is just a carelessness, right? And I think that's normal in a teenager's head, to just be a little bit carefree on any type of, vehicle. But in this case, it's dangerous because, they're just zipping around faster than they normally would be. And so, I'm just throwing this out there. This isn't for you guys, that's something that we really need to do is step up the educational component of, hey, if we're going to have e-bikes, we're going to have all these other multimodal forms of getting around, there has to be a safety element that is provided to the parents and the children that are using those devices so that we can all use them safely, and then that the streets do really become for everyone, right? All the multiple users, including vehicular people. And as the mayor always says, we need people to slow down. And that's the truth of it. And in some cases, we're going to need the e-bikers to slow down too. So that's it.
Thank you. Sorry, guys, I'm not seeing that screen, but any other comments from the council? I have to echo Councilmember Horvath's sentiments. It's gotten crazy out there. I live on Broadway. People are blowing stop signs. They're going the wrong way. And these are mostly kids, barefoot, no helmet, doing 25 miles an hour. It's not good. And there's already been one horrible accident. I want to commend the kids who are following the rules, because some kids out there are paying attention and are doing the right thing and are wearing helmets and stopping at stop signs, and so way to go. I encourage the parents to watch their kids. It's not all kids, but it's mostly the kids. And, it's a sense of freedom. They're on their bikes, they're pulling the trigger. And it's a free-for-all out there. I know speechifying at a council meeting isn't getting to them. But as parents, we all need to, not that I'm a parent, but as adults, we need to talk to them sensibly. And it's a countrywide problem, statewide. It's going to take state laws to fix this. Apparently, it's not regulated, is what I'm finding out. But people are acting like the rules don't apply to them. And so we need to be attentive and slow down. Okay. With that, I guess there's a motion to receive and file and acknowledge, something like that. Was there a motion?
No, I think we have the other half.
The LTN.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Next presentation.
So with that, Your Honor, I'll present Jackie Bacharach, Executive Director of the COG. We've got David Lejeune and Aaron Baum from the COG as well to help her out. So thank you, Jackie.
Thank you very much. This has been a really good discussion because we're here to really tell you that we want to cooperate with you. what we're doing is really complementary with what you're doing. As you know, I'm Jackie Backrack, Executive Director of South Bay City's Council of Governments. And as you know, we take, our boundaries are from the port to the airport is what I affectionately say. When you get onto an e-bike, you don't necessarily know what city you're in, and that's our job. Our job is to get a message out to everybody along in the South Bay to create a standard idea of how it is to ride an e-bike and what would be safe. And so we really want to work with you, and this has been a great discussion, and I'll go into our presentation, but I just wanted to say that I think what we're doing is so complementary to what you're talking about. What the local travel network is a South Bay network that is going to promote all kinds of slow-speed vehicles, not just e-bikes. And I should say, it might be in our presentation, that if you think e-bikes are prominent now, the California Air Resources Board has a legislative mandate to give a rebate out for e-bikes to certain people. And so that will be 2023, and you're going to see more e-bikes in 2023. Okay, so our local travel network is throughout the South Bay. There are 2,000 miles of streets in the South Bay, and we're talking about 243 of those miles as being our network overlaying. A lot of it is the streets that you're actually working on with your Class 3 bikes. That's probably duplicating a lot of what we're doing. We want to connect neighborhoods to destinations. We want cities to be connected so that when you get on your bike, you can, if you live in Hermosa, you can get to the Redondo Beach Performing Arts Center or whatever, so that we're one community as the South Bay. We're talking about slow streets, which are 25 miles an hour, and we're talking about making them safe, finding places where you can cross at signalized intersections, which we're identifying with your staff, which, by the way, is a great staff. And then we also are talking about Charos because we want to get this done. People are owning these vehicles, and they're also fantastic opportunities to use them for local trips. When they are used for local trips, they get off our major arterials and they free up traffic on our other streets. So if people would think about these as another vehicle in their household, we could actually spread the traffic in the South Bay, create safer ways of getting around, and also have it be fun, which we all know is why a lot of people are doing this. Next slide. We've done a lot of pilots and other kinds of experiments, and we have found 70% of the trips in the South Bay are 3 miles or less. 90% of the trips are 10 miles or less. You don't need a huge vehicle to go 3 miles or less. And so what we're talking about is right-sizing your ride. We're actually working with UC Davis on an app that you can go to that would allow you to figure out, can you use a slow speed vehicle? What are your daily trips? And if 70% are under 3 miles, you don't need 3 cars in your garage. You could use a slow speed vehicle. We've worked with you on climate action plans, and this implements your land use and transportation strategy in your climate action plan. We're talking about safety. Education is a huge part of what we were planning to do. And then I love to say this, but when we got this started, we found out that there are slow speed vehicles that are for physically challenged people. There are neighborhood electric vehicles that are designed for wheelchairs. There are scooters that are designed for people that are physically challenged in other ways. So this is going to create access and mobility for people that don't have it right now. And then we're also talking in this time of possible flex alerts, these charge on level 1 charging, a simple plug. And so they're not going to be huge drains on the grid, and we're also going to be working on where we can put level 1 charging in your destination so people can charge their vehicles. Next slide. Charos, I don't have to explain. I think you all know what they are, but we're also working right now on wayfinding signs. So what we're going to have is signs that are going to be uniform throughout the South Bay that will say, you're now on the South Bay Local Travel Network. That says to the person on the slow speed vehicle, I'm in a place that I can feel there's going to be other slow speed vehicles around me. And it says to the automobile that wants to use that street, be careful, you're on a street with slow speed vehicles. Next slide. We're talking about all kinds of vehicles, as I said, anything that goes 25 miles or less, and obviously electric bikes can go more than that, but we're talking about in the main vehicles that go 25 miles or less. And then we're also talking about personally owned vehicles. We are not promoting rentals. Next slide. And this is the state rebate that I didn't realize we had it in here. But you can see these vehicles are good for deliveries, and apparently in San Pedro, they're actually using them for deliveries, and they're good for families. Next slide. So on the left, on my left, I don't know what it is, I guess it's your left too, are the universe of all the South Bay streets. On the right is the proposed South Bay Travel Network, and Aaron, who I will introduce in a second, actually rode this travel network. And what our first challenge is the Beach Cities Corridor, which is your city, along with Hermosa, Manhattan, and El Segundo. El Segundo is our challenge because it's currently legally landlocked. We're gonna have to find legal roads to connect the network, but the city council in El Segundo is very enthusiastic about it and has instructed the staff to work with us on that. So we can't do all this at once, so we've identified the beach corridor as our first corridor, and the green corridor, which is Hawthorne, Lawndale, and Gardena, as our other first corridor, which we're calling the inland corridor. The rest of the South Bay Travel Network, we would figure out other phases, but we have interest from Lomita, for example, who wants to see when we can get there. So we think this is going to be an exciting way to get around the South Bay. And like I said, it'll be all signed, so you'll know where you are. Next slide. I'm going to have Aaron come up and tell you about the proposed network. I should say we rode these streets, but our job right now is working with your staff to make sure they coordinate and they're the best streets for you. But Aaron?
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, council members. Appreciate your time. As Jackie said.
Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Aaron Baum. I'm the program manager for all things mobility, technology, and transportation at the COG, among the other things I do. So I've been working on this for many years, and I'd like to give a shout out real quick to Jim and to our colleagues here in Public Works. Our work to develop the local travel network really resides off the back of their hard efforts. It's been going on for well over a decade in terms of bicycle infrastructure. So I'm going to do a little bit of a drill down and sort of talk a little bit about how this came to be and sort of operationally how it works. As this slide sort of describes, it's about interconnectivity across cities within the South Bay, and this is the beach corridor. Again, the idea, as Jackie mentioned, would be someone from Redondo Beach leaving their home, being able to go all the way up to Manhattan Beach for brunch, or conversely, maybe somebody coming down to King Harbor for an event. That's how it works. It works within your city as well, connecting schools, parks, destinations to where you live and work as well. Next slide, please. All of our work in terms of the proposed routes that we've taken is seen through the lens of safety. The streets that we've proposed are all local streets, that is 25 miles or less, within neighborhoods. We're not using major arterials. We're crossing at controlled intersections, traffic lights. We're avoiding bus routes and trucks. And well, this slide actually shows you the number of bicycle incidents from 2016 through 2020. The darker the line, the color, the more incidents. And just to give you a sense of how this works for design-wise, if you look at Artesia, you can see lots of color on the Artesia, lots of traffic or bicycle incidents with cars. We chose an east-west line initially on Grant as an east-west corridor street that would get you across Redondo Beach. Subsequently, we were refining this with staff and with stakeholders, but you get the idea. The idea is to get folks off of busy streets, dangerous streets, onto local streets, going around the city and through the city, interconnecting with other places. Next slide, please. And so, again, this is the proposed travel network within Redondo Beach, sort of a drill down into sort of what this might look like within your city. These are proposed streets. Again, we've been working with staff, and they've been great with their notes, and with stakeholders, which street is better than another street? Are they connecting to destinations? Are they getting folks to schools, for instance, safe routes to schools, or to commercial centers like Riviera Village? And this is what it looks like now, or actually as of May 31. Next slide, please. And again, the idea is like, again, interconnectivity to destination. So this is a map that shows you where places people might go within the city of Redondo Beach. It's not 100%. Obviously, there are places that we may have missed, but this is how we worked the design of the network. And again, the process is to refine that with staff and stakeholders. Next slide, please. And so just sort of looking at different areas of Redondo Beach. This is North Redondo Beach, a little bit of a drill down, a little bit closer into where folks live and where they might go. Next slide.
Can I interrupt you for?
Sure.
Where did you come up with some of these routes? Did you investigate all your potential and come up with these?
That's a great question.
Some strange jogs.
There are many iterations here. We started from a data perspective, looking at streets, looking at speed postings, looking at traffic safety incidents. We field tested everything. So
Really?
Yours truly was either on a bike riding it or in a golf cart driving it. And that's how we got to where we went to this network. We interviewed and met with stakeholders like Jim and other folks who have an interest in safe routes and been involved in this for years and years. Again, their best thoughts, their best ideas, but it's a work in progress. So that's how we got to it. I put some miles
North
in my
Redondo
life.
particularly, there's some strange jogs you have north of
Indeed.
Artesia.
Yes.
Matthews and, interesting.
Yeah, and I would say it's a good crack at trying to find a safe system throughout the city.
Because I ride my bike a lot, and it can be, which way now?
It's
Even though you know where you're going, there are safer ways than others, and if you're not familiar, this could be helpful.
And I think you're getting to something that's sort of super critical, and that's what the council members have been talking about as well, and that's the educational piece. Intuitively, if you ride your bike enough, you learn what a safe route is. You know where to cross safely to get from one side of Redondo Beach to another. Education is just absolutely super critical to figuring that out, to communicating that, to making sure that we're changing behavior and the culture of mobility within the city and across the South Bay. And that's ultimately what this comes down to. I mean, we can pick any street we want, right? It might be better for you or better for you. But at the end of the day, it's got to work from the grassroots up. And so this, again, is a process of refinement, of iteration, of getting it right as best we can, and with all the stakeholders. The next couple of slides kind of speak to sort of the timeline and to some of the things that are important to getting this up and implemented.
Now, let me just interrupt you.
Yeah, sure.
This is fantastic, because if you're going to get people on their bikes, especially in these densely populated areas, narrow streets, one-way streets, stop sign, no stop sign, and you're not familiar with it, or you're trying to figure out the best way, these sorts of, I guess there's going to be signs, did I hear you say? Yeah. So it's going to be very helpful to people trying to get out there and get on their bikes, because right now it can be daunting, frankly, especially if you don't ride, even if you ride regularly.
Yeah. I think signage is absolutely critical. It goes hand in glove with the idea of actually building a network, whether it be just bicycle infrastructure or the local travel network or sort of the merging and confluence of the two. The COG is working right now on a Measure M project to develop wayfinding signage. Okay, it's a branded sign that would go on the curb that would say you are on the local travel network. And I think you have to consider this as a backbone network. That is to say, those blue lines that are on those maps are really kind of the thoroughfare for getting around the South Bay within your city and across communities. The wayfinding signs, along with the chevrons, the markings on the road, are directional. They tell the user, I'm on the network. This is a safe street, should be a safe street. Mostly. I take care to the folks that are in automobiles and vehicles. You're sharing the road. And again, you're going from home to destination or home to work and thereabouts. So yeah, absolutely. So the timeline is now, and the Measure M applications would be submitted for funding next year. So those applications would be due at the end of this year, early January. Again, working with staff and stakeholders to refine the network, figure out the street selections to be selected, and then the funds would come through the sub-regional Measure M funds. Jackie?
I was just going to say there's more good news to this, and that is that we have our own sub-regional Measure M funds that we would contribute to this, but we also want to obviously use any funds your city has for this, but we might be able to do it faster if we work with the city on the early projects that you have. We're hoping that you'll authorize your staff to submit a Measure M application this cycle so that we can get the money and start putting the wayfinding signs up. And the reason I stood up is I just wanted to make sure to mention that we're very serious about this being a South Bay network. So even though we have 2 early projects, we're designing the signs with every single city. We invited all cities to come. We had 11 cities at a meeting talking about what signs they want and how they want it to look. So this is going to be a South Bay network. And I wanted to make sure we mentioned that. But a lot of this, most of this is going to be paid for, not by your city, but by the sub-regional funds that Metro has. And I think we can go to the next slide. And this is the one that we're trying to work on right now. Aaron has got meetings with Beach City Health District PTA councils, interested homeowners associations in some cities. We're trying to get to people, not just to tell them about it, but to get input like you just gave us. We want input. We want to know where this should go, and we want to do that before we solidify the whole thing. We are trying to get a funding for a ride and drive event so that we can not only show people what these vehicles are, but we can have like the accessories, you know, the cargo, how you hold your kids and how you hold your groceries, and have people have a chance to ride them. And so we're trying to do all of that and get funding for that as well. We'll be working with your city on marketing and on education, and then on implementation. So I think that's our last slide. One more? Nope. Okay. Yeah, you're right. The last slide is actually what we'd like you to do, and that is to prioritize this. You're already doing your beach cities, your bike path, but we hope that we can have a beach cities corridor that gets implemented as a corridor, not just in Redondo Beach, but throughout the whole beach cities area. And so we want to complete our route refinement and work on the signage, and I just have to add my kudos to the fact that your city does participate, Ted and Andy, in our work. But we really would like that to be something that you direct, and that you also ask them to return with a Measure M application so we can move forward.
Ask you to return with a Measure M application.
You have to do it in your city, and then we'll process it and we'll pay for it. But you got to have, we'll do it together, but it's going to come from your city.
It's 4 bullet points.
Right, yeah. So I thank you so much, and this is an exciting time to be giving you this presentation because you're already, we're already going to be working together. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The future. Okay, Councilmember, I'm sorry, guys, I can't. Who's next?
I am my turn.
Go ahead, Councilmember Lone.
Thank you for the presentation. It's very good. Great work. We had a nice talk last week, I think. Could you put up the map about schools, where schools are, everything?
Sure.
This is the map where the
should be about
LTN
3
is.
slides back. There you go.
This one, right.
Yeah.
So I noticed that there's no paths to schools. And is there a reason for that? Because, we want to encourage kids, especially older kids, to ride their bikes to school.
Yeah, good observation.
And e-bikes and whatever.
Yeah, great observation. Let's just say it's a work in progress. We've taken good notes and we've tried to listen to the feedback from yourself and others. The challenge was that the network works from sort of an informal way to destinations near where you live or where you may be going to this backbone network. We were thinking about sort of the not being too overbearing in terms of the number of laterals or spokes, if you will, to destinations. But if it's warranted, sure, like the middle school right in the middle of the map there, I think that would be a good spoke to have, assuming those roads had safe crossings.
Well, Prospect's a challenge, and it's actually the Paris Middle Schools we were talking about that's actually in the wrong location.
Yeah, I think we
talked
about that.
One of the reason I bring this up is the one trip that most parents make every day is to drop their kids off to school.
Yep.
We have community schools here. And then we have, Jim and his crew and other folks who've done a really good job of bicycle safety. The police department done a really good job of bicycle safety for kids. We want to encourage that starting at a young age, not too young of an age because, but I'm really thinking ages grades 4 and up maybe. And I think it's a great opportunity that we're missing here. I understand because then it would be everywhere, right? But it's something that people take every day. And I think it would be great to do that. That's the first comment I had. The second comment I had is, and I think we talked about this, I would like to see more class 1 bike lanes, protected bike lanes. We talked about this. I think I've mentioned this last time. I was in Amsterdam, as Brianna had mentioned. It's phenomenal, their bicycle network. It's the best I've ever seen. Even a city like Barcelona is, thousands of years old. They find a way, even without modern, now their streets are more modern, but narrower streets to be able to have protected bike lanes. Berlin's another, and I know I'm pointing to all European cities, but Montreal I know has great bike facilities and bike lanes. None of those cities other than Barcelona are blessed with great weather like we are, right?
True.
And so that's really on us more than you all. But, and the last thing I'd like to say is, and Ms. Campeggi mentioned it, education is key here. And reaching people through social media is really important because that's where so many people get their communications. I don't want to say their news because, we know they get their news that way, but and making it fun. Because a lot of times people look at it as a PSA and they won't look at it as something that they need to take seriously. And making it fun, maybe even engaging in either a PR agency or an ad agency, to really get into people's, let's say Facebook and Instagram feeds, I think is probably the best way of doing it. That's really where you're going to get people paying attention. And so I really applaud you. Like the mayor said, it's a great program. I just want to see it succeed. I think we all want to succeed here.
Thank you. Great comments. And we take that to heart. I think the idea of reaching schools I can share with you, is something that's pretty much universal across the South Bay with all stakeholders, from PTA groups to moms groups, all the way down. And so that kind of synergy towards safety is something that we're heavily invested in making this network, address, if you will. So we're working on that. And I think, again, with staff and stakeholders, I think we'll get to an answer that sort of solves that problem. And class 1 protected lanes, you build it and we'll say yes.
Yeah, a lot of it's on us, right?
Yes.
As and this among many other things that we're doing, but we have a great opportunity at this point with all the streets we're redoing to do that. And it's going to take some money and maybe some grant funding. So thank you. Councilmember Horvath.
Yeah, so Councilmember Lowenstein and I completely agree on this idea. And this is not necessarily, I just want to point out, part of what the LTN is about, right? Because the idea of us creating class 1 or class 4 dedicated lanes would be in kind of, it would be adjacent to this. It would be kind of an expansion of the South Bay Master Bicycle Plan, right? Which can work congruently with a local travel network that's supposed to be on residential roads, So we need to do both, and you're right, we need the political will, which I've said often here, to be able to say, hey, if we really want to see a less car-centric society, then we need to pull the trigger and say we're going to create these programs or these type of dedicated protected lanes on our major arterials and or collector streets. And then they would work in a congruent fashion with something like the local travel network and or the existing South Bay Master Bicycle Plan. So I think it's a great goal to work towards, and I hope that future councils will accelerate that and really, again, going back to the educational point that you're making, and with the COG having the reach it does, is really promoting the fact of why we should be doing that, because you're right, we are a a beach community and or even the South Bay in general. You know, we really live in the lap of paradise here, and there's no reason why we, a community that is not centuries old like European cities, can't do it. If they can do it, we could too. So that's it. But thank you both for coming as always.
Councilmember Hamby.
Thank you. Can we switch to the North Redondo slide, Tim? So I was noticing on the some of the earlier ones, they had a lot more roads than these do. And since this was to try to get funding, I'd like to see if we can work on expanding some of the area roads that put them back that weren't in there. For example, Beeland has some restaurants there. They have the park right there, and it connects right up to the bicycle path, then to the White Circle. And so I'm not understanding why White Circle's not on this LTN. It's just a matter of removing that pole. So I'd like to, and there's others. I don't want to spend the whole meeting going over what I think should be added to this plan. And I'd be happy to work, we can work offline on getting some of them added. But there is definitely some more that could be done on this. And since it's just for the funding phase of it, I think it's really important that we put as many streets as we think could possibly get on there. And when it comes to the Grant Avenue, as the mayor was saying about, some of these streets, when you're looking, I see the reasonings of putting it off of Grant Avenue, but Grant Avenue does have a bike lane. And if you were to go on Rockefeller to get to Bernie School to talk to the other councilman's points about getting to Bernie, that Rockefeller is extremely steep road. It's really hard to get up and down, as opposed to Grant's really relatively flat for the kids to be able to get to school on that. So I question the move to put it on the other streets, because those other streets, Rockefeller and it's escaping me what's on the south of Grant, but they're very narrow. They're very narrow streets, and so to be able to ride on it, if you're riding a bike on that street, and they're one-way streets, and so if a kid's riding on that street, they end up blocking the traffic, any kind of traffic that's on there, because they can't get through at all. So I question that work around Grant Avenue when Grant Avenue has a perfectly good bike lane that's on it right now that works pretty well. So anyway, and I'll let the different councilmen speak to their different areas, but I'd like to, when we receive and file this report, that we also we'd like to add
Additional input from the council people to have more streets on there. Also, I can see the Beach City grayed out for Manhattan Beach and Hermosa Beach and all that. I'd also like to see the Lawndale side to see if, we can make sure we can see if we can get any connectivity that way. For example, going to El Camino College from my area, it's a very easy bike ride to get over to El Camino. And so I want to make sure there's a bike path to get us over there. And then there are kids from that area north of Redondo that go to Maricosta. So I want to make sure they can go get over to and from school there. For example, one of the problems is if you go down Robinson, if you're going to follow the rules, you can't go westbound because they blocked off that intersection because of the people that were cutting through to get to PCH. But if there could be a consideration to having exceptions for LTN vehicles, or I don't know, you guys can be the experts on that, but they can come home from Maricosta going down 2nd Street, which turns into Robinson, but they can't get to school on that road. So they have to do a little jog. I mean, you can get around it for anybody who knows how to get around. But I'm just saying is that those are kind of things we got to look at if we really want to have an LTN network that makes sense. And then I get why you want to put the signs up, but there's also sign fatigue. And so you got to balance between trying to get advertise it and at the same time, not have people just get sign fatigue to it. So maybe consider actually painting it
on the street themselves, like a Shero kind of does. So just an idea, but just because people, especially with cars and trucks, they can't see the signs because we're on these narrow streets that are parking on both sides. And so you're not going to do that. So that'll be an interesting marketing problem, just an idea to think about. And I don't want us to forget that it was August 16th. I think we had some really good letters about the LTN that came through. Remember the picture of the pole that was in the middle of the sidewalk and stuff? That one. And so if we could just kind of refer back to that, to those couple of letters. I think it was Brianna Egan and Dr. Craig's Pang were the two letters that were on there. There were some good suggestions on there on what would be appropriate to put on there. So I believe others want to speak, but if we do, whoever makes the motion, if we could just do it as the mayor suggested, that we have additional input from different council members in their district, because I think we need to be a little more aggressive to get this big chunk of funding at the beginning. That's it.
Let me just say this is a great start, and there's some input for you. I think you had some people go out that, weren't familiar with the area, obviously, which is great. But I think you need, like I spotted that Grant Avenue avoidance right away. I'm like, why would you avoid Grant? I mean, that's the big street, that's the Cheryl place. But I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking. And I think we're receiving file. Does this mean you're going to go do this? Or are you going to take more input? More input? This is like a
Definitely want
first
to take
cut.
more input, yeah.
Okay.
We're here so that we can make sure that we get what your city wants for this network.
Yeah, so you're getting some of that up here. Would an appropriate motion be seek more input?
Yeah,
Something along those
have
lines.
staff, that's councilman's work with staff to add more rows to this application.
Yeah, and Mayor, we can ask for not only to work with the city council members, but also vet this through the Public Works Commission and bring that back to the council at a later date.
You can imagine how exciting it is for us to come here and have you tell us to do more. Thank you.
Yeah, we have some more public
I
comment.
got a quick couple questions or comments. So the connection to the village, I see that you guys are on there. That's huge. But to the Councilmember MD's point, I don't see any connection. I see here most Manhattan, but I don't see anything for Torrance there in the shaded gray.
Right now, we don't have a connection in Torrance, and Torrance, Torrance is still, they haven't made themselves available to work with us. So we're going to be working with them. Yeah.
So
That's a nice way to say that.
very nice way to put it.
Maybe that's on us to work to make those
It would
links.
be helpful.
I like that challenge. That's good.
Yeah.
So if you go back to the slide that we just had, actually that one, perfect. Thank you. Love to see PV Boulevard. And the reason why is because it grabs from Torrance and it grabs the rest of the avenues, goes down to the village, right by the village. It's such a center point right now. And the village has, the first day that we put up extra bike racks, that night I walked by after my shift and it was packed full of bikes, absolutely packed. So adding those bike racks and many different, a year ago when I started talking about bike racks in the village, I said, I don't want just one big bike route, I want them all over the place. That's the important, because people, when they take a bike, they don't want to walk 2-3 blocks. They want to go to where they're going, park the bike and walk 100 feet, maybe at most, right? Other than that, you go back to the heat map real quick. Perfect. I actually, when I first saw this in the meeting the other day, and including in the beginning here, I thought, oh, this is where all the traffic is. But then I realized this is the injury incidents. I'm very glad to see that there aren't that many injury incidents happening in there in a couple of my areas. In fact, in North Redondo, you hardly have any. But I do see the one on Catalina there. There's no metric number here. Is this 1? Is dense? It says, is this 5? Is it 10? Is it 100? Is it 1,000?
There is actually a number underneath it. I don't have the data set
That's
in front of me.
mileage.
No, that's just a map. That's a key. It's actually dense.
Well, it says dense, but what's the number dense?
Yeah, I
Over what
don't have,
period? Or I
don't
guess
have that handy, but this is over 4 years. I would suspect that number is probably less than 10, given the similar data I've seen in the past. But there's actually a number, and it's an aggregate of numbers over 4 years that results in a color on the map. If you want that, I can get it for you.
It's fine. I was just wondering if you knew what the number was, because if the density was over the last 4 years, we had 500 or 1,000, that'd be a huge issue, right? But if it's 10, it's not like anything. And I do notice on, just have to say it, Harbor Drive has quite the density of accidents down there on that new bike path area.
Can I add to that?
Yeah,
It might
sure.
have something to do with the fact that there's more people down there.
Well, okay, so there's a density,
So
right?
it's incidents per miles ridden probably is even better, probably, but yes, there's a lot of incidents down there. So.
Right. I mean, it's really, what you're looking at here is where cars and bikes are in the same spot, basically. And
right.
as you said, there's more, you would expect that down by the pier, for sure, in the harbor.
I would love to get.
Can I just add to that, just a side note, little point of view, also, this is what is reported to the police.
Yeah.
And so, for example, on Artesia Boulevard, some people won't, I just happened to be at one where there was an incident, and the police came and they told her, it's technically your fault, so it'll count against your driving record. And so she said, never mind, I'm not going to report it. So it doesn't get included in this data. Okay, so just FYI on that.
Good point. So I'll just say that I would love to get a copy of these slides as well, because I'd love to show my community meeting, kind of what we're doing, what we're seeing, what we're moving forward towards, and give you guys full credit for it. And the last thing regarding the European cities, just remember European cities were built for horse and carriage. They were for slow mode. They were very dense as well. So you also have underground subways and subway transportation and other transportation. So it's a whole different, we were built out in a wide manner for roads for cars and vehicles, not for localized
Well, on
density.
that, Boston was built over cattle routes, and they don't have a great bike network, so it's an American thing.
We talked about
And New
Europe,
Jersey
though.
has an 800-mile bike rack, right down, right near, against the canal. So I mean, come on.
Yeah, a lot of them have railroad,
Yeah,
right away, I
exactly.
agree.
And Canada has a whole rail to trail system.
Yeah.
And so that's what you're saying, right? Yeah.
I get what you're saying, but yeah.
But we're not
There's a
buying
will,
it.
there's a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
That's right.
Build it, they will come. And we see that in the village with the bike racks. So that was my comments. Thank you guys very much. Great work. And yeah, more than happy to grab that transit from Torrance. So.
And by the way, I think Switters, if that's the metric, picks up all accidents. It doesn't have to be vehicle versus bike. It could be somebody falling off a bike. It could be somebody slipping. I know there was an issue where we had concerns with the slippage factor going through the pier. We had several folks slide on bikes at the time. So, I mean, I haven't seen this slide. I don't know what the genesis is of the data, but Switters picks up all forms of accident. It's basically claims.
Okay.
Okay, any more comments?
I have some.
Jim, did you want to make another comment? Can we have a motion to allow council?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you.
Because we need to make a motion, because normally we don't let people talk.
I will try to make it short, but.
You don't have to.
Okay, I don't?
Yes,
I
yes, you
shouldn't
do.
have said
Yes,
that.
you do. Yes, you do.
Don't say that.
Give them an H, stakes a mile.
In advance. Well, great presentation, and it's about my favorite subject, naturally, but it's interesting because I think most of you know that, where we came from. We put together a grassroots organization, and 2009 to 2011, we hired Alta, which is a planning company specifically for this reason. We had 17 workshops. We had thousands of people attend over like a 6-month period. We had maps up there. We asked them where they ride and put a pin in the map. And so we took that information, and that was the origin of our bicycle master plan. And these were actually bike riders. Now, I know that, I see a lot of duplication here, and I think it's just, duplication, it's interesting. It's kind of like the man with 2 watches that never knows what time it is. What plan is better than the other plan? I mean, I certainly think it would make more sense to try to integrate this. I mean, when I look at our master plan, I mean, we took advantage of the different classes of bike lanes, you know, from a class 1 separate bike lane, class 4 separate bike lane, class 2, you know, in certain applications, it makes sense to have that. And class 3, naturally, Sherrills. Sherrills are generally very good for people that, you know, in spandex and ride a lot, and they're more veteran riders for sure. But, you know, when it comes to kids and families and people, you know, recreational cyclists, that's not what you want on the streets. And I think that, you know, our bike, you know, infrastructures or even more like that. I don't want to be in competition with anybody because, I mean, I think it makes no sense at all. When you got two groups that are probably doing something very similar, obviously we should integrate that effort. And I know at one point, 2 or 3 years ago, I did send them a copy of the Bike Master Plan, got very little response from it, but that's okay. So I also wanted to say that just a couple other things in here that I made notes of, but, they showed that they have 243 miles of class 3 bike lanes they're proposing. And it's interesting because our bike master plan has 212 miles of new bike lanes and actually goes through Torrance and other cities. And it was also interesting in 2012, we were asked to go to Palm Springs on to receive an award from the COG. And we received a Compass Award from the COG that we had the first multi-jurisdiction bicycle master plan in the nation. That was what the award was for. In other words, we were the first one that had the linkage, connectivity between the other cities. And we, you know, it was a very proud moment for a lot of us. We felt like, you know, we accomplished quite a bit. But again, we're not in competition with each other, but it is kind of odd that they come up with often the same kind of types of things. But I don't see any of our bike master plan that we developed overlay into their plan, at least the, you know, the concept they showed.
That's time.
Oh, darn it.
Motion to extend.
Like extending another minute?
Jim.
Yeah, 1 more minute.
Okay, so I think if we're all trying to do the same thing, and that's where we developed other modes of transportation, get people out there so they're healthy, you know, lose weight, great for the environment, all the other reasons that we are trying to do the same thing. It would be nice if we walked out of here joining hands, maybe, and we're able to accomplish that in a more effective way. Also, I just want to use my last 20 seconds to say that we are developing a hub website. And what that is, it's intended to be for education. And what we're going to be doing in the next couple of weeks, we're creating cards that we're going out, we're distributing those to all the bike shops, all the, you know, places they sell bicycles, especially to kids. Ask them to distribute these cards when they sell a bike, especially to kids that never ridden before. We're going to have videos on there. It's going to be the best thing we can do, considering it's going to have to be virtual. I mean, we can't wait to get back in the schools again and relaunch a lot of our programs, but we can't do it right now. So we're trying to make a difference in the community, and we've got a lot of strategy out there. I mean, I'd certainly like to work with the police chief again on you know, taking a better look at our sidewalks. I mean, we have the same district as they do, and we cover, I get more complaints on being hit by an e-bike on the sidewalk, and I think we need to do something about that. And I think we haven't visited our plan, the code, since 1977, so maybe it's time to do that. Anyway, I'm here to help. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for all your work, Jim. Really appreciate it.
Okay, Mayor, I have two Zoom. So Councilmember Obaji.
Councilmember Obaji.
Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes. Loud and clear.
All right. Sorry, I'm not there. Jackie, thank you so much for coming and presenting on this. I agree with other council members that we definitely, you know, in our meet and greet about the subject, we did not get into the specifics on streets. And that wasn't a focal point, but I think what we're saying is we're eager to go forward, but we do want to make sure that the streets that are designated for the LTN are the right ones. And Councilmember Amity makes some good points on the hills here. Rockefellers, Hilly, Huntington, which is the first street south of Grant, is not hilly, but it goes the opposite way. So Harriman would be seemingly more appropriate. What I'd say is on the signage, I've not seen any signs, proposed signs yet. So I think we'd love to meet and confer on that too and get discussion about that at council, because I would hate for the sign to just say, you're on the LTN or LTN. Hopefully it says what direction you're going in, east, west, north, south, with an arrow, what the next monument that you're going to reach or destination you're going to reach if you continue on this LTN path, the Redondo Beach Marina, International Boardwalk, Hermosa Beach, what have you. So those are some of the things that we should have in mind. And Councilmember Lowenstein is absolutely right that we do need to integrate the schools in this, and our LTN must in Redondo Beach show the way to get to Redondo Union High School, as well as maybe Maricosta as well. So hopefully we can move forward and to keep that in mind. But I thank you for getting this started at the COG level, and we're here to support y'all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike, is there an issue there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, actually, he can't.
Agendized for, and because
I know.
he didn't have time, he
Right.
can't participate as a member of the public.
Right, got it. Okay, any more comment?
I didn't know that.
Yes, I have Grace Ping.
Give him 3 minutes.
This is Grace Peng. I am the League of Women Voters Beach Cities Natural Resources Director, and I'm also the Natural Resources Director for League of Women Voters Beach LA County, and I'm also on the Transportation Committee for the League of Women Voters California. I want to remind you all to take a look at my letter to City Council on August 16th, where I gave you detailed comments on where the local travel network could be stronger. And I also would like to invite the City Council to view the video. Aaron interviewed me about the LTN, and I went through and I showed him how I use my e-bike to go around my day-to-day activities, how I get to different grocery stores, how I get to Target, how I go to the doctor's office. And we went through intersection by intersection about ways that the route could be safer and more supportive, so that we get more people, more middle-aged moms like me, to go ride e-bikes instead of drive our cars. And maybe if we do get enough of that momentum going, we will get people to ditch their third car, ditch their second car. We are a one-car family with my e-bike, and my daughter's great at taking transit and navigating it. We were quite happy sharing one car with 3 drivers, and that's the kind of thing that I want to work towards in the beach cities. Because for League of Women Voters, lowering VMT is very important to us. We care about climate change, we care about pollution. We also care about safe routes for 8 to 80. That means that an 80-year-old on an e-tricycle the roads should be safe enough for an 80-year-old on an e-tricycle. It should be safe enough for an 8-year-old riding to school. And I also want to remind you that, like Councilmember Emge said, you don't get what you don't ask for. Because of the California surplus, active transportation funds were like tripled. So there is money in play, and we should go out there and get it. And then don't forget, Department of Transportation is now run by new dad, Pete, who now has doubled the funding for safe routes to school. So let's go get us some money. And then I also want to say that I spent a lot of time looking at SWITR's data and looked at where kids are being hit. And yeah, there's some irresponsible behavior, but then there's also irresponsible behavior by us, the adults, that made these collisions happen. For instance, we have a lot of mid-block collisions where kids are coming off of driveways and the driver hit them and said that they didn't see them, and they couldn't see them because we allow tall vehicles to park on both sides of the street.
That's time.
Okay, sorry about that. And can you extend?
Just wrap it up, Gray, please.
Okay, and then I want to tell you about the collision at Clark and Flagler was not an e-bike. The driver did not see the bicyclist, and the bicyclist obviously didn't see the driver, but it was not an e-bike, and it's unfair to put it on that. And then if we want kids to behave.
Is there a motion to extend? We can't just keep letting you go. You need a motion to extend.
I'll extend 1 minute.
Is there a second? Okay, go ahead.
If we want kids to follow the rules, then we can't put a stop sign every 350 feet on the North Redondo Beach bike path. It's not, I mean, we can't set up impossible expectations and then say that the kids failed. We should keep them on Grant instead of making them climb these impossibly steep hills where they have to stop every block and then while they're climbing a hill and then get going again. So if we want kids to stop, we have to give them a safer, more level route. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Yep.
Okay.
So I make a motion to receive and file and to have, expand the network with consulting with different council members. Is that how we said it?
Whatever you said earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, you got all that, Ted?
And Councilwoman, did you also include in your motion to return to vet this through the Public Works Commission after working with each of the council members and then return with that expanded network?
As long as you have the right time frame to go, what did she say? Go get us the money? As long as it gives you enough time frame to get us the money, yes.
What is the time frame to get the money?
We would be working with the COG staff to ask for Measure M monies on new projects at the end of the calendar year. And those usually take about 9 months before they go to the COG, to the Metro Board for their approval, with funding agreements coming in shortly after that. So we've got until the end of the calendar year to work through this and to be able to package a project together. Now, again, the project doesn't have to be a comprehensive citywide for every square inch, but obviously the more comprehensive it is, the better it is for the application.
Yeah, because I understand this is just phase one. I get it. But I think there's just some obvious things that we know about our neighborhoods that we could add.
Right, and one of the things I heard a couple of times mentioned on certain streets at certain locations, the slow speed network is an area that was identified to be at 25 miles an hour or less, which is one of the key elements why we didn't choose a street like Grant as an example, where the speeds are 35 miles an hour. There are, as part of that slow speed network, bicyclists and e-bikes that will probably use the bike lane that's there. There may be golf carts that are electronic vehicles that are not necessarily driving in the travel lane, but they're not going to be driving in the bicycle lane. So I think those are the elements that we'll vet through as we talk more about the expansion and the connectivity. And the connectivity is definitely a key component of it all.
And just a reminder, as it pertains to getting the money, Ted and Andy just got 2 big chunks of money for this type of work, both for Ripley and then the property acquisition at the corner of Inglewood and Grant. So these two are quite familiar with getting the money, and particularly in the area of active transportation. So they'll keep that up. I'm fairly certain of that.
What was the money for on Ripley, you said?
It's that part of that earlier network we discussed, a big grant there for the corridor. And we just got word, and this is a big thank you to Jackie, who helped champion this at the COG board meeting. But we're hopefully this month going to receive affirmation that our property acquisition effort to acquire the cemetery property is going to be funded through Regional Measure M. So
that's true. Really?
Yeah. So we'll hopefully have very good news to report.
How much was it?
It's 1.5 million, 1.6, 1.7.
It was 1.5.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, it's the cemetery-owned property at the corner, not the cemetery.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yes, thank you.
Just to be clear.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so there's a motion. Did we get a second?
Yeah.
Okay, motion and a second. The roll call vote, Councilmember Narenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji absent. Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Well, there you go. Great work, Jackie. Thank you. I really appreciate everything. Okay, moving right along into discussion possible action regarding the draft conceptual plan for beautification and landscape improvements on the southern Edison right-of-way property licensed by City west of Pacific Coast Highway.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I turn it over to Andy, I just want to say this is also a strategic plan item in which Elizabeth is going to be joining us because she worked on the first half of it, which is getting the license agreement with Southern California Edison to get access to that property. And since then, we have had a few meetings, and I'm not taking away any of your presentation slides, Andy. So ideas and concepts, and we have hired Architera, our landscape architect, which Andy will present their concepts, which we're here to get your input on before we move this thing forward. So with that, Andy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ted. And thanks for due to Elizabeth as well for working to acquire that license agreement. That was in May of this year. The council at that time asked for a budget response report to identify costs associated with developing that site, landscaping the site, putting in some paths and that kind of thing. And the initial estimate came back pretty high, about $1.5 million for the 5-acre site. And then we worked with Architera to do a scaled down phase 1 version. We estimated about $450,000. So we want to talk about that concept tonight, as well as the larger overall big picture. And to do that, I'm going to invite Greg Denson up from Architera. Architera serves as one of our on-call landscape architect firms. And Greg has been working with us on this project. He comes and he'll share, I'm sure, about his firm and about his own experience, but they're a firm very familiar with development of open spaces and nature parks and that kind of thing. And great firm to work with. So Greg, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate that. So yeah, a little bit about, well, my name is Greg Denson with Architera Design Group. We're a landscape architectural and site planning firm. We were established in 1991 by Richard Crumwitty, our president, and just had our 30th year celebration last year, which was great in business. As Andy mentioned, yeah, we have extensive experience in nature park, open space preservation enhancement, and design. We want to intend to always place a strong emphasis on sustainability as part of that design, which always ensures a positive and site-oriented project outcome. Our office also has 18 full-time staff members, so we're a pretty decent-sized firm, of which many are licensed landscape architects, as am I. So a little bit about some of our project history and how it relates to your project and projects we've worked on. This is the Sunshine Canyon landfill in Sylmar. We've been working on this project over 10 years and working with Republic Services they had a problem with trying to establish native plants on their closed deck facilities. There were several constraints with, gas wells and access points and compaction and soil chemistry that just made this really difficult site to even get anything, even weeds to grow on the decks. So we started by doing an analysis and doing soil samples, and then over a period of time, we did a trial site and have been continuing to increase that acreage each year. So it's a project that I anticipate will continue to go on. And some of the before pictures you can see on the left, and we've had really good success with that, even after post-fire that came through and wiped out, 3/4 of the site. It regerminated, just part of the natural ecology. Next example is the Villa Borba project site in Chino Hills. This was a project that had several native plant mitigation sites, including wetland habitat, oak woodland, inland sage scrub habitat. There was also trails that were designed to provide overlooks and interpretive signage to educate the users and community about the plant habitat and community. The project itself has 100 acres of natural open space, of which 65 of those are improved open space, including some of those mitigation sites. And you can see there in some of those examples, some of those interpretive panels and signage. The Cucamonga Basin, number 6 in Upland, California. This one we worked with San Bernardino Flood Control District. This was a former just pit of rock and gravel that the county came in for flood protection and worked with our office to build in wetland habitat for storm protection, riparian, alluvial fan sage scrub habitat as well. And there were 3.5 miles of trails navigating different levels of this wetland and riparian habitat, including additional overlooks and signage and trailheads. This project was a recipient of the ASLA Merit Award. And then a little bit smaller scale, this is a recent project we completed, Phil and Nell Soto Park in Pomona, California. This is kind of what you would kind of deem a nature park. So basically a site that was barren within a built community that had a historic context of over 100 years. And so we came in and from the ground up, from conceptual to completion, designed in several pathways of native plants, drought-tolerant plant communities, interpretive elements, and this project was also a recipient, but this was an honor award by the ASLA. So some examples of some of the project work that we've done. Let's talk a little bit more about your project. So Andy reached out to us, I think it was in April, and we talked about, hey, he mentioned that he had this project at Redondo and Catalina under the SCE power lines, and really needed some graphics and some design to help start this conversation. And so they requested that we look at the site and see if we could work in a design that addressed accessible pathways and also work in some kind of a passive open space and potentially a demonstration garden with drought-tolerant plant natives. The existing site, obviously, if you're familiar with it, we can go to the next slide, has, which is kind of highlighted in that red, the large towers that support the power lines. There's 2 separate lines that go through there. There are existing sidewalks on 3 sides of the site. There's parking on Redondo, and there's topography-wise, the site to the east is a little more flat. There's sort of a plateau area, and then that green area, which is close to the middle of the site, it slopes down pretty significantly all the way down to the west. Some other just key aspects is there's also a high-pressure gas line that kind of runs laterally from east and then goes to the southwest corner of the site, and there's actually an existing chain link encasement for a meter and I guess registered meter there. So we'll go with the next one. So just some images. These were taken in April, so it didn't look too bad at the time. The crown daisies were blooming.
It's the best time of year.
Yeah, right.
Let me assure you.
It's true.
Like a month out of the year, you took photos.
Right. And if you were to drive by today, you're going to see mostly it's brown. Most of it's dormant. There are some weeds and invasive species that are on site. So first step we took at this was looking at, once again, how could we work with those constraints? SCE had a number of things that they wanted us to address, and that's clearances from their towers. So when I was showing you the red in that site analysis exhibit, those are areas that we really need to keep vegetation out of. They want free access with their vehicles to be able to go around the base of those towers. The dark circles you see there, those are the tower poles. They also wanted a 16-foot wide access road to the towers that are further to the west. There is also a downslope condition too that exists along the north side of the site, and there's a retaining wall condition that's pretty close to that area. So we wanted to respect that and obviously stay clear of that. And then we looked at, what could this possibly be? I mean, if we're talking native habitat, why not look at the historical context of the site and the historical habitat that pre-existed? So really looking at that coastal bluff community and the Strand community seemed like a great place to start. So we looked at that as kind of the plant communities that could be presented here on this site. And then access-wise, with so much clearance on the east, there's an obvious entry point from that side as well. but we wanted to taper it down and make it more of a pedestrian scale. So there are, as you could see, navigating, meandering, serpentine pathways that lead down to the west, and taking into consideration grade. And so stretching those distances out so we could lessen that grade and make it easier to traverse. And also if we were to use a material such as a stabilized decomposed granite, usually the less slope you have, the less chances you have of extensive erosion. So that was another key aspect to designing this and being able to stretch these areas out. There are also along the trail some collection cobble, I'll call them dry stream beds, but they're more of collection for erosion, runoff, water runoff, so that there's no erosion onto the trail. So those sort of follow the sloped portion of the design. And then there are a number of connections as well to the site. So the idea was to try to be able to traverse this as you're on the on the upper plateau on the east. You know, you do have those views to the ocean, which are enjoyable. And then as you would traverse down or traverse up, you know, you'd have, you know, views of the plant communities and kind of experience each of those plant communities as you navigate the site. You know, we see the opportunity for some interpretive signs as well. So we did locate a few of those, one on the west and one on the east side as you enter the trail system, and potentially some minor grading to help control and also encourage some infiltration of any of the water that sheds off of the decomposed granite trails. So grading wise, I briefly mentioned it. So
you know, you can raise that up. I just want to.
Can I?
I mean, you might want to relax the way you are, but I mean, I was like, you know, you can just raise it up.
Oh, yeah, there we go. It always happens. I'm always hunched over when I do these things.
Yeah, so that's why I was like.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah.
Really? Okay. All
Look
right.
at that. See, you
guys are pros.
Yeah.
It's not our first rodeo.
I guess. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So as I mentioned before, the portion to the east, the upper, I'll call it the upper plateau, you know, the majority of that area is flat. And then about midway through the site, as you traverse down slope to the west, it does have a series of slopes that occur along that edge. And that's kind of reflected in those cross sections. That cross section AA is kind of an east-west cross section. And then the BB cross section is more of a north-south with Redondo on the left. So that's kind of reflects that. So probably like a 2-to-1 slope. And then, like I said, there is a portion that has some retaining where the towers are. So some of while these aren't all of the plants, we at the time wanted to at least give a sample of what some of those plants could be. You know, a number of perennials, annuals, evergreens, hopefully, you know, flowering for the majority of the year instead of just in the spring. And there's also grasses and forbs and a number of other plants that would help to provide stabilization of those slopes, as well as color, texture, and floral beauty. And then we can go to the next one. And then after we had done these exhibits, we were provided the recommendations by the South Bay Parkland Conservancy, went through their plant palette. We just happened to highlight the ones that we had already just kind of shown earlier. So you could see there are a number of them that we already had thought. You're looking at coastal prairie saying, can we make that happen? Of course we can. They had a lot of good recommendations in their list, and I don't see a problem with working some of those into a final plan. So we can go to the next one. So Andy mentioned so that was the overview of the entire site. So what would be our proposed phase 1 scope, starting from the upper eastern plateau area. We see this as a good place to start because we can address the real critical constraints with SCE. And then we're out the gate, with a system where we at least have a looped trail that you can navigate and then access from a different various locations. And that would highlight mostly that coastal prairie plant community. But as I mentioned, that palette can be expanded. The one thing we do want to make sure is that we're following any of those plant restrictions from SCE. They usually have a height limitation. Most of what we're talking about is low, so I don't think we'll have any problems with that. So as we mentioned, this first phase is approximately 1.6 acres, roughly a third of the site. Those estimates that we provided are running us right around 450, and that is your current budget for this phase 1 improvement zone. That would also include perhaps some expansion of the planting on the west there as you have the gateway coming in. Looks like it had recently been refurbished, but there could be some additional expansion in those areas by where the existing Melaleuca and that existing pine to the south are. So with that, we'll go to the next one. So just like the last presentation, we're here to discuss the conceptual plan, get your feedback and input, and where do we go from here, and how do we keep developing this into the final design?
Great, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Greg.
And I'm available for any questions you may have.
Appreciate that. It's a very high visible site, and they've basically been using it as a laydown area for various construction projects all over the South Bay. So this will be a huge improvement and really beautify it. And many thanks to Southern California Edison for working with us to do something nice out there for a change. And it's a very compacted area. This prep is a big part of the cost. But boy, it would be nice when it finally gets up and done. So did you guys, Ted or Elizabeth, have anything to add? Or?
No, maybe I'll put a little bit of additional color onto this. What we're looking for from you all tonight is are you generally liking the conceptual layout that's been provided? And if you are, what we would strongly recommend is that we move forward into the final design construction drawing phase. We can certainly continue to incorporate input as it relates to plant palette and final materials as part of that. But we would like to keep moving here. And it's going to require a final design agreement or at least a change order amendment to move forward. We would execute that. And that will allow us to immediately move into final plans and specifications, get this thing out to bid and get it constructed as soon as we can. I know how eager we are to see some improvements there. You have funded it. We've scaled this particular phase 1-2 budget. That was part of our budget response report. You provided additional funding to get us to that point. And this is really what we can achieve with existing funds. If we get a favorable bid, it allows us to then move into maybe other areas of the site and ultimately execute more improvements. So if you're comfortable with what you're seeing and you're liking it, I think that's the direction we're generally seeing and looking for tonight. And we'll keep proceeding. If you've got significant concerns or you want to see a completely different type of plan or drawing set, then we can come back to you with that. But it's obviously going to require some additional time and energy.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that, Mike. Any question? I'm sorry, Todd.
Yeah, thank you. Couple things. One is, I believe this is the only view corridor from PCH from, say, Malibu down to
Seal Beach.
To Seal Beach, yeah. So that's, this is a really great highlight of it.
Only view shed from PCH to the ocean from
Malibu?
Really Malibu to Seal Beach.
So I love the plan. I think it's a great plan. I'm going to thank staff for working so hard on this, and I'm going to embarrass the mayor, but he deserves so much of the credit for this. He was dogged in his pursuit and his negotiations with Edison, and I dare to say this probably would not have happened without the mayor's efforts. And I don't want to embarrass you, Bill, but you're key to this. So thank you for all that.
We talked about this 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And what is so interesting is they came out with an estimate, I think it was $400,000 12 years ago.
Wow.
For sod on the whole area.
Sod.
Anyway, it didn't happen.
And we'd
been a
be
long road.
taking it out right now if it was sod, right?
Yeah, this will be a more responsive, sustainable solution.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I'd like to go forward on this. There's one or two things I'd like to see, but I don't think at this stage, I don't think we're ready for them yet. And so I think your plan is great. I love it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nairn?
Yeah, thank you. A couple of things. So does your, it's a great plan, I love it. The portion on top, does that include the parking area on top? Does that include ability to park vehicles?
So that, it would not include parking is my understanding. You have the parking that exists, the angled parking on Redondo. So users would then navigate to either the east or the west sides and enter the fully improved. In this case, for the first phase, they'd enter from the east side.
Right, and that's, I'm fine with that. I mean, there's plenty of parking there on Redondo. What about places to sit down, benches, concrete benches, if we have any concrete benches and, all right.
So that's not shown on the plan. However, I don't see a problem with that, especially if it's something that can be moved. One of the things that SCE really pushes is that, you know, if they're going to bring something in a line, they're going to destroy it. So if we're able to move perhaps a bench and it's, you know, something that's not anchored in with a footing or a full built, you know, seat wall, pour in place or something like that, I would imagine you'd be fine incorporating that into the final design.
What I would love to see, and the reason I'm asking is some carve outs within the meandering path. And people can just go there and just sit and look at the view.
Yeah, I like
That's
it.
what this is about, the view, right?
Right, it is.
You can't
It really
just enjoy it with walking. You gotta sit down and take a few minutes and stop and smell the flowers.
Those best view opportunities would be in this phase one, where you're up on that plateau and you really take advantage of the elevation of, you know, 40 plus feet higher than the westerly edge. Yeah.
Right. You have $94,000 in watering in here?
As part of the irrigation system?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the way most of your habitat restoration sites work is you'll do an on-grade irrigation system that usually is in operation, 3 years is pretty standard. However, you may need to go longer or shorter based off of the weather, and how much natural rainfall you get, but that can be weaned. You can taper it down to where the plants that we're proposing, we're hoping that city's open to the idea of, basically they'll just self-sustain with natural rainfall once they're established. So that covers the cost for that initial irrigation of temporary system.
And when you say on grade, are you just putting PVC pipe out there?
Yeah, it'd be a UV brown line on, basically on grade, yes, sir.
Yeah,
And it would be offset from the trail a few feet as well, kind of typical, just so there, because usually the on grade, you have like a rotor system, so you can really maximize your radius throws. And those typically have like a rebar stabilization bar, so you do want to keep those a little further away from the pathway.
I love the meandering path design. It's great. All I, like I said, would add to it is places where you can kind of sit. If you have any concrete benches or whatever, just the ability to hang out there and just in view and stop in the view, enjoy the flowers as a view.
Yeah, we'll work with Edison to see what we can incorporate. There will be some structural limitations on that. You can't conduct electricity as an example. They may have to be lighter weight than we would typically put in a park, which sometimes lends themselves to vandalism and kind of movement. So we may have to create, unique ways of temporarily anchoring them that would meet Edison's satisfaction. But it's a great thought. And I think in our final design effort, we would certainly try to incorporate as many seating areas as we can, subject to Edison approval.
And I just have to kind of, and making sure that people move along and not just sit there for overnight, long term.
Which is, the type of bench will be a kind of a delicate choice. So we'll do everything we can to try to meet those needs.
Yeah, typically with that type of a concern, middle divider usually helps at least in the avoidance of someone laying on it horizontally.
Yeah, I mean, in other areas, plenty of, I don't, and plenty of other areas here that I'd be concerned about as well. But it's a great design. I think it's awesome. And I think that it's a great start. Doing it in multiple phases is great, and change as we need to. Change and yeah, move. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions, comments up here?
So based on you guys have already had experience with this kind of, natural plantings in the North Redondo one off of Artesia Boulevard. Now, there's some things you've learned on that. Are any of the plants that are being suggested something that you would normally have found having trouble with the Artesia ones? In other words, I want to make sure that it's really great to have public input with what to put on there, but you guys are boots on the ground and you know what works and what doesn't work. So for example, one of the plants that we get at Artesia, to be more specific, we always get those little white fungus on there. So staff has to always go in there and remove it. So I just want to make sure that the things are being considered.
Mistakes.
Right. I don't want to duplicate mistakes because the public might have really great ideas, but if they cause staff trouble, then we should not put them in.
Yeah, we'll certainly be cognizant of maintainability, and I know the root barrier was a big issue in our planning on the north side, and we'll seek to avoid that with this installation, I think, and final plan set. But yeah, we're obviously looking for something that's sustainable, that limits our opportunity and obligation to get in there and have to maintain it, and hopefully we can find the right balance.
And I certainly agree with not putting in the grasses. That totally failed in our installation. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, if you have the interpretive signage that kind of highlights the various species, but also talks about the time of year when they may go dormant, so that there's some expectations managed where it's not, a standard ornamental garden. It's really a native plant garden. So it does go through cycles of dormancy and growth.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. Education signage, that's good.
We've run into it a lot of times where the plants, let's say the flowering yarrow, for example, looks beautiful. And, if you're a cut flower person, you use the dried flowers for arrangements, but people see dried flower heads and they think, well, the plant must be dead, or
you're not maintaining it.
Or it's not being maintained properly. So just kind of, like I said, managing some of those expectations so people come to understand and probably even enjoy some of those seasonal changes.
And look to balance the material to an extent too, to where we don't have an outright, dormancy period, right? Where we've got some plants that are looking still healthy and attractive while others might be dormant.
Correct, yeah. And we kind of envision it with a combination of both hydroseed, where you can have a lot more species diversity, but also in conjunction with that, probably some containerized species as well that could be planted in groupings and add some additional interest and also growth, get a jump on some of the growth.
You're going to get a lot of input from the local area, and they're doing it all over now. And there's a mix of, the native that go dormant, and then some that bloom at different times of year. And you're going to get a lot of input. Anyway, Councilman Moore.
Yeah, just jumping off of that point, I guess it really provides an opportunity to be an educational site as well, right? And so if they're, identifying what the species is, you see them a lot of times on nature preserves, right? It's a little placard. It tells you about, what you're looking at and why, right? It explains everything that you're just saying. This plant is dormant during X time of the year, blah. And that way people's expectations are now managed because they have some understanding of what it is they're looking at and why, or why it was put there. It's an indigenous, plant to, the Central Coast, whatever it is. I think that there's room for that if you are really selecting such a diverse, coastal palette for the place, so.
Real quick, I forgot to ask, if you don't mind. Maintenance and timeline for this to be built, installed if we vote and approve this now, and then maintenance requirements later on.
Yeah, I think our next step will be to probably negotiate a bit of a change order to the current working relationship that would incorporate final design, construction drawings, et cetera. That will move much more quickly with Architera. given their history here, and they've already advanced the design quite significantly. I think Andy, a couple of months probably to begin to finalize plan set, get it back for bidding purposes.
Yeah, I think we would definitely like to pause somewhere around the 50% and take input from Public Works Commission, for instance, in this body, for instance, just to make sure we're on the right track. So that may extend us by a month or something. But Greg, help me with your process here. Say, take how long to get to 50% after we give you a notice to proceed, and then how long to get to final?
Yeah, I think a few months, as stated, is reasonable. I think we could get to that point for sure.
A few months for what?
A few months to finish the construction documents. So
we need to come back to you with probably a professional services agreement. They're on an on-call basis right now, and I'm not sure if there's room in the capacity of our on-call contract to do a final design. There may be, but if not, we'll need to come back with a separate agreement. That won't take very long. I mean, the selection process, if that's decided tonight, won't take very long to bring that contract back.
Part of the reason we may make the decision tonight.
Yeah, and then maybe a month or two to get to a 50% level, and then a review period.
And we may not have to bring it back to council. I mean, at that point, we can take community input and probably gather that and pull it into the plan set unless we think that there's really major decision points or inflection points in the design. I don't think there necessarily will be. But I think to your question, Councilman, I think we could probably, after supplemental input from the community, probably have final drawings prepared in early 2023 and potentially get out to bid and be into construction. I don't know. Ultimately, what do you think the installation schedule of something like this would look?
I wouldn't think it would take more than probably a 3 to 4 month construction period to install. I think addressing the maintenance concern that you had, I mean, the contractor would be on the hook at least for the initial maintenance, but really the key to success with any kind of establishment of hydroseeded natives is kind of the ongoing maintenance and eradication of any weed species. So those first 3 years are kind of critical because that's when you're allowing those natives to fill in the voids and kind of compete out any of those invasives. So there may need to be a grow-kill period because there are a number of invasive species that are on the site right now. So that basically means get the irrigation in and operating and kind of irrigate it, germinate what's there, because there might, depending upon timing, if we don't have perhaps rainfall naturally that's germinated those species, if it's in summertime, let's say, they can boost any of those weed seeds to germinate and then try to really knock down as much as they can before getting in and doing their final hydroseeding.
And to the point, it may make sense for us to actually build into the bid 3-year, maintenance installation period. I mean, I think with the contractor, it would be good to put them on the hook for this, make sure they're out there weeding, make sure things are germinating the way they're supposed to. And I think that's a reasonable cost item and one that I think, would certainly alleviate any initial pressures from us. And then after that 3-year establishment period, we might be looking for partners. Our folks internally will obviously be obligated unless we find partners, but we expect this to be fairly sustainable without a lot of, this isn't like putting 2 acres of turf out there and having to mow it every week. It's a much different installation.
Like I said, once you get these other groups up there, like the Parkland Conservancy, and even talking to people in Hermosa, there's going to be a lot of enthusiasm just, organically around the area.
Exactly.
Just once you get it up and going.
Yeah, it could be something where it's a community event where people come out and they help. Maybe it's even with just doing some simple weed pulling, if there happens to be, something that proliferates during a certain period of time that the contractor didn't catch. So, but that is one thing that is kind of vital, is hitting early on. And many times when they're just emerging, it's hard to identify what's native, what's a weed. And so, but it's a very short window of time to then once eradicate those new seedlings. So that would be key, and it would be part of that ongoing maintenance. I think that would make a lot of sense to put it into their contract.
Greg, could you talk a little bit about the right time of year to install this?
Right. So, I mean, traditionally, the cooler temperature, like a day like today, not a great day to be putting hydroseed out on a slope. So ideally, your winter months, your fall, October 15th through like March 15th is like optimal, right? But we've done, matter of fact, the Sunshine Canyon landfill, they had most of that in place. We took advantage of a little bit of rainfall by the time they got the seed down, but not much. So the irrigation got fired up about middle of June. So that first summer, we still had some seed that came up, but some of the other species waited till the next year. They just didn't have the right climate conditions for that. Like I said, tend to be more of a fall to winter.
I don't know how familiar you are, but we have this saying, May, June gloom. So,
right.
Yeah, it's very damp. It's very cool.
So that could be beneficial as well.
Yeah, and believe me, June will be foggy.
Right. So that might actually aid in getting some of those species established quicker.
Might work out perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, any public comment?
Let's see, I don't have any Zoom, but I do have e-comments. Vicki, would you like to read those?
Thank you, Eleanor. First comment is submitted by Barbara Epstein. Thank you for working with the Edison Company to create this beautiful entrance to Redondo Beach. It will be a great asset in terms of a place to relax and to access the waterfront. I imagine this is an important part of our future network of urban trails and bike paths that will connect all parts of our city and our neighborhoods, and someday will connect us to the Hermitage Belt. We will see many native species come to this native plant habitat, giving more birds and butterflies a place called home. Deepest gratitude, Barbara Epstein. Next comment is submitted by Brianna Egan. It's exciting to see this native garden concept move forward with an SCE license agreement, knowing they have very strict requirements. The final design for this space should include adequate connections to the Hermosa Greenbelt, including signalization and bulb outs for pedestrian crossing along Redondo and Francisco/Valley. It's such a wide street that pedestrians are not safe crossing, and bicycle parking and bike route connections from Harbor Drive. I would suggest there is still potential to include a drought-tolerant edible and sensory garden concept, Mediterranean palette of fig, pomegranate, artichoke, rosemary, and lavender, and water-saving techniques like bioswales, vernal ponds, and rainwater catchment. See Arlington Garden in Pasadena as an example of a public garden with multiple garden zones, both native and Mediterranean. Providing adequate shade and benches should also be a garden accessible. SCE probably has restrictions on buildings on site. Some kind of interpretive center on native plants, animals, and peoples would be special. Outdoor event space would be nice and could also be a potential revenue generator for the city for rentals. I think the city should put out an RFP for full design services that would also include a community and feedback process to make the process transparent. I'm going to refresh really quick just to make sure we didn't have any.
Yeah, there's one more.
Okay, thank you, Eleanor. Here it comes. Submitted by Deidre Brand. A couple quick comments. One, perhaps the plan section nearest the gateway to the city be designed as evergreen with perhaps a small amount of supplemental irrigation. Do you plan on testing soils and proposing soil amendments if needed? 3, I believe there should be some kind of gather or resting place within the site, maybe a place to have a picnic. And 4, please budget appropriately for intensive weed management through more than one season. It makes or breaks a project. I'm thrilled about this project. Thank you, Redondo Beach. And that concludes the comments under e-comment for this item.
That's it.
Okay. Any questions, any motions?
I'll make a motion to receive and file a report, send to the Public Works Commission, and
I think proceed with final design is the key.
Final design.
Yeah.
architectural design.
Architectura, yeah.
And what else do you need? Anything else?
I think that's it. That's the key. We'll start to gather that input, and we'll work to execute the final contract here with Architectura and move this forward as quickly as we can.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay. So just do a vote. Councilmember Nairnheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath. Aye. Councilmember MD.
Aye.
And Councilmember Obaji absent.
Yeah,
Anything else, Ellen? Is that it?
that's it.
Thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you.
Okay. Last discussion item, possible action, consider options to expand installation of bike racks on commercial properties. Brandy. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. With this item, it was a strategic plan item to review options for expanding the installation of bike racks on commercial properties. Redondo Beach requirements for developers to install bike racks for commercial or for non-residential projects is only for those projects greater than 50,000 square feet. And that's, we've seen that in other municipalities as staff has done research. Both Hermosa Beach and Torrance have that same requirement. But most of our developments are on a smaller scale, so bike racks being installed are only done so voluntarily on those smaller projects. So in the research, Hermosa Beach does have a specific plan in their Upper Pier Avenue area where they do require one bike rack for every 7 employees or 3,000 square feet of floor area. Manhattan Beach actually has a requirement for bicycle parking at a rate of 5% of the requirement for automobile spaces, with a few exceptions where bicycle uses by patrons or employees wouldn't be expected, such as ambulance services or animal boarding or catering services, to name a
What
few.
does that mean, Brandy? Like 5% of their parking has to be
So
for
whatever their automobile parking requirement is, they also have a 5% requirement. So if they,
square footage, what are you talking?
I think the number of spaces. So if you're required to if you're required to park 20 vehicles on the site, you're going to be required. Yeah, you're going to have one bicycle. So that's their requirement. Now those are the actual regulations where they require the bicycle parking, both in Hermosa and Manhattan. But the city of Los Angeles actually does more of an incentive program. They offer where a developer or a business owner could provide bicycle parking in lieu of vehicle spaces. So they could replace one automobile parking space with 4 bicycle parking spaces. So that's their ratio. And it would be capped at, you could only have, reduce the amount of automobile parking by 20% for the non-residential developments. And they have very detailed design standards, so it's not just throwing up bike racks and they don't seem to work, but rather they have, requirements of how the bikes have to be able to fit, the distances between the bike racks, locations and such. And one other thing that we could consider is an incentive. So we have, there's the regulatory side of things where you can require the bicycle parking. There's the incentive where, like Los Angeles has done, but another incentive might be a grant program, on a smaller scale to what we had for the Artesia Aviation Storefront Improvement Program, where a business could come in and apply for that. So that's the research that we've done on that. And I just wanted to, present this to City Council, see what your interest is, whether it would be regulating or incentivizing the bicycle parking.
Or do nothing. It's always the do nothing option.
Or do nothing.
Don't forget about that one. Well, I mean,
That concludes my.
I'm not for that. That's just,
that concludes my my presentation.
I
just giving you the research.
I
And the
just want to
background.
see on a staff report on option 1, 2, 3, 4, or do nothing.
yeah. Never mind. Okay, just one time. I still
Laura's.
haven't figured it out. Go ahead, Laura.
Okay, I'm definitely going to advocate for an incentive program in which we do, they can eliminate one space for bike racks by far, especially the reason why I would do that is because in Artesia, we're working on that parking plan and how to change that. And it's been brought to my attention, and I was wondering if you could clarify for me, is that there is a more stringent parking requirement on Artesia Boulevard than there is at the Riviera Village. Is that a true statement, or is it the same throughout the city?
It's actually based on the zone. So the requirement for the parking would be based on the zone and then based on the use.
So it is less at the Riviera Village than it is Artesia Boulevard.
It may be. I'd have to evaluate that and look at that to see if what results from that, from the zones there. But if the zoning is, the same, zoning categorization, then it would be.
So you're not saying zone as in like Riviera zone or Artesia zone,
Right.
you're saying zoning?
Yeah,
Okay.
right, zoning.
All right, so the reason why I brought that up is because I didn't want to make a blanket statement if there's different parking requirements for different areas. And so that's the only reason why I said that. But on Artesia Boulevard and North Redondo, there's definitely an opportunity because there's such density around those areas for people to bike and walk. Grocery outlet, believe it or not, I see so many people walking to grocery outlet instead of driving their cars. And that parking lot is open, is not, I wouldn't say it's empty, but it's not as utilized as it could be. And I think a lot of it and when you walk into the store, it's always quite full. It's more about the people are walking and you can see them carrying their groceries home from there, or they're riding their bikes over there. And I think one of the reasons why this came up is because people were complaining there were no bike racks at CVS, which, by the way, did we ever go approach CVS to see about putting in bike racks? I know we put in bike racks on the sidewalk, but as an afterthought.
I know that we had talked about it, but it might have been right around the time that COVID hit. So I don't know that was the priority at the time, but we can certainly reach out to them.
Okay, so I'll include in the motion that we will, ask for any other businesses that you guys would like. But I think that the CVS, the grocery outlet, should have one on there. And I know we have one on the sidewalk, but people don't see it. And it's a huge sidewalk. So anyway, I would like this council to provide an incentive for all new businesses that they can reduce their parking requirement if they add in bike racks. I don't necessarily have to go up to 20%, but I definitely should, I would like us to consider doing that.
Why just new businesses? Why not business sitting there right now?
Because that's what we have control over.
Well, actually, the city of LA has it for new or existing. So if an existing business wanted to come in and reduce their parking spaces and provide that bicycle parking, they could.
Well, then, by all means, I stand corrected. Yes, then I just thought that we didn't have any power on them.
Bike
Yes.
racks for everyone.
Bike racks for everyone. I agree. Well, I was just at Fusion Sushi in Hermosa Beach, and they have a car space that is for electric bike parking only.
Doing in Hermosa.
What was I doing in Hermosa? I know, right? And so they have a place. I go to Hermosa and Manhattan all the time. And so, anyway, so they have.
They come here.
And they come here, right? And so they have a space that's dedicated to just electric bike parking, which I thought was funny. It's like, well, so couldn't a regular bike park here? But I didn't. Anyway, they took one away, the parking space for that. So yes, that'd be great.
You're in favor of incentives.
I am in favor of it, so thank you.
Okay, Todd?
Yeah, I would agree with what Laura said with a couple of comments on it. One is the thing that pops up in my mind is the new Galleria, whatever you want to call it, South Bay Social. That's one thing. Also, the 5% seems like a lot for Manhattan, but it really isn't, because if you got 100 spaces, spaces for 5 bikes is nothing, really. But I think of that. I also wonder if we're going to practice what we preach. We're going to do this for the Pier area, Performing Arts Center, our properties as well, too. Make sure that we have plenty of bike racks for those places, too. This all kind of ties into the local travel network, right? Because we talked about these paths, but people have to be able to park their vehicles.
Safely, right.
Safely. And so, I think it's great. I think maybe 10%, like you said, is fine.
And we can adjust it.
Yeah, we can adjust it, but I think it's great. I think it's a great thing. And, I notice what you mean about grocery outlet. I see that all the time in terms of that lot being empty. And bikes would be great for that. And it would be a great place to get people to ride their bike and then walk along Artesia. So I just think we should, I don't know what the right amount is. I think 10% would be fine at this stage, but I hope we also as a city lead by example and also provide it. So that's what I would say.
And I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was just piggybacking on what he said too, and maybe look into, I don't know if we could do even more of an incentive to have covered parking for the bikes, because e-bikes do better when they're in the shade too. So just a thought. I don't know. This will all come back. We can discuss it then.
Right.
Okay. Councilmember Nairn?
Yeah, so speaking of e-bikes, anything that's rechargeable for e-bikes, not that riding an e-bike is really truly riding a bike. No workout in part of that. The first thing I would say is part of this should definitely be not painting these bike stands black. And the reason I say that is because I see it in the village all the time. A bike stand that's painted black is hidden. And then all of a sudden, 5-10 feet away, you'll see a bike chained to something that's not black, like a beater or a pole, because they don't realize that that is a bike rack. And they A, don't see it, or B, don't realize what it is. But Hermosa, they paint in different colors, and they put a logo on there. They clearly identify it as a bike rack. I think it's really helpful, really important. So when we do the incentivization, we clearly state that these are bike racks.
Make them conspicuous, yeah.
I mean, they're not supposed to be hidden. That's kind of my point with this. It's not. I don't want these hidden, put away, right? I want them front and center. Trash cans, you can brand them black, and my point to it is this. Yeah, totally for the incentivizing this, especially in places like the Riviera Village, where we need a lot of these bikes. People want to pull up to their location and park their bike there and then get out and go directly, right? 10 feet, 20 feet, whatever, 100 feet at most. I will do a caveat to the incentivization, and that is everyone knows the little old building between Avenue A and Avenue B for Burrito next to Alberto Jr. It's been sitting there vacant for X amount of years. I've called the owner multiple times. It's been sale for $3.5 million. Nobody wants to buy it. It's like $5,000 a month for rent, something ridiculous. That doesn't have enough parking there on site. It has like 3 spots on either side, I want to say. So 6 spots, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 plots. I wouldn't want to necessarily incentivize for them to take out one of those spots because they're so severely underparked at that location.
So maybe there's a minimum cap before you can.
Yeah. And I see that in a couple places along PCH. If we get rid of that, or the 20%, I'm fully on board for, I'd actually more go for the 20%, but I want to be careful. Some of these places that are older buildings, they even don't have enough parking to begin with. And not even to our parking there, they just don't have enough parking.
Well, and you can't take out 1/6 of a space, if you only have, if you're going to grant 10%, you only have 6 spaces on property. I mean, that in itself might solve the problem, just by way of the minimum being 10 spaces or 11 spaces or something like that.
In that case, that's the case. Okay. Not but and charge station caveat, and look into not just have this for the businesses. I talked about the wireless, or not wireless, the charging stations. Incentivize, hey, if they add electric bike charging for it. Whether they want to make somebody pay for it or not, I don't care. But I'd rather go down the incentivization route rather than forcing this. I think it's people, when businesses see the benefit, it's far cheaper.
Yeah, and one of the, the points that we're looking at right now on Artesia Aviation is that parking and what's the right sizing for the parking requirement. This might be a really good measure for looking at that citywide in addition to that area, because it is an alternative mode of transportation for people to get there.
Yeah, and speaking of Artesia, you see that empty grocery outlet parking lot and you think, boy, other businesses in Artesia could benefit from that, even if it was just employee parking or something else. There's a way to share that parking, which goes to the Artesia study, which will be coming back in a couple months.
One more comment.
Okay.
Anything else?
You had a motion?
I didn't hear.
I mean,
No, I didn't, but I just have one more comment on that.
Okay.
But go ahead and make your motion. I can speak after.
I'll make a motion to receive and file a report, add the comments regarding electric bikes, and for, what do you guys want to say, 10, 15, 20%? 10, 15?
Let's start at 10.
We have
Start at
public-
10%.
Public comments also.
You always add, always go higher. So start off with 10% and to include electric and.
What kind of incentive? I mean, we keep.
Would be in lieu, right? Your incentive would be.
You may be able to increase that percentage if
just in lieu.
you're, yeah, something along those lines. I think the other one that was mentioned, it was covered parking, maybe having additional.
I don't mind, tomato for that. Also, because of our recent COVID and we're allowing outdoor dining where we have traditional parking at, maybe if we can incentivize part of when we maybe start looking at permanentizing or changing some of our requirements for parking for outdoor dining throughout the city, maybe the bike
Point to bar parking is maybe an ability to mitigate some of that impact. Yeah. I mean, the nice part about that is that's use of our own right of way, so we can sort of control the regulations that we apply there outside of the coastal requirement of no loss.
Yeah, everybody forgets Riviera Village is in the coastal zone. So we got a Coast Commission to do it.
Coast Commission will allow up to 20% of your parking to be mitigated with 6 spots per.
Yeah, if you have it in your LCP.
If you have it in your LCP.
Right, which
a maximum of 20%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have public comments?
You have public comment? Go ahead.
Okay, let's see if anyone on Zoom would like to make a comment related to this item. There he is, okay. Okay, Sims is S. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly.
What'd you say, Eleanor?
Sim Izes.
Sim Izes.
Go ahead.
How do, can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Very good. I'm glad that you're looking forward to supporting more active transport throughout the South Bay. And as Councilman Lowenstein said, if you're going to have more active transport, you're going to put more bikes on the street, you have to have more place to park them. I know that the SBC Plus, we used to wander around. I think there was a couple, 3 guys out of the club that would approach businesses and ask if they wanted the bike racks located in their business, near around their business. We could find a place that was, sometimes it's part of if the parking's angled, you put it in the dead zone, or you can put it on a side of a building. It doesn't necessarily have to take up parking space per se. And when the city would install, it had its own design of bike rack that it wanted to be standardized throughout the city. And the city would install it, and then we would call them a bike-friendly business and publish it on our website. So all of that, we would love to help you out with that kind of thing, and love to approach businesses with that kind of thing. And the more active transport, the better. I do have a question. When you guys start saying 10%, do you mean that for every 100 cars, you have to have 10 bike spots rather than say square footage?
Goes by number of spots required, if I'm not wrong. If you required 20 spots and you do 10%, then 2 spots would be allocated to bicycle parking?
No, we're looking at the maximum amount of the required parking spaces that could be converted is 10%.
And by converting, meaning you can, as opposed to providing 20 parking spaces plus bike parking, you could convert 2 of those and then therefore provide as a commercial development 18 spaces and then have the rest of it offset by bike parking, thereby potentially expanding your redevelopment area, square footage wise.
What I meant to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Potentially, although at that point, it's not a big delta, of course, but it's something. And sometimes some of the, you look at Grub House and some of these projects that we've got moving in the community, they're like right on the line to meet the parking standards. So a few things like this, which recognize the more modern transportation network, actually allow them to move forward and are probably more appropriate given the use of space today anyway.
And as I said, I know that some of the bike racks have been already installed. They are installed on the side of the building on a storefront area where it's not a functional sidewalk. They don't always have to take up the space per se. So we can install them on existing storefronts with existing businesses also. And I just thank you for allowing me to speak, and I appreciate all the hard work you guys do.
Yeah, no, thanks for calling in. Your input was great.
Okay, we have one comment. Go ahead, Vicki.
Submitted by Brianna Egan. This is a great item. I really love how responsive Public Works has been to installing new bike racks by request of city council members and probably also businesses and BIDs. Is there an official program for business owners / landlords to put in a formal for bike rack installation? If not, there should be. As we have seen with Riviera Village, removing parking spaces and replacing them with dining decks and bike parking was actually a huge boon for restaurants and businesses. This can be done with Artesia Boulevard as well. Around 10 bikes can fit in one car parking space. In the Netherlands, cities use temporary bike platforms. I'm not going to try to pronounce that word, to pilot bike parking sites and test their popularity and utility. This way, the neighborhood gets to test whether they want to install a permanent bike parking lot, and the city can respond efficiently to requests. I strongly support the city to continue to move proactively with a commercial bike rack program, such as installing by request. Observing policies and programs from neighboring cities can only tell us so much. Cities are notoriously behind on implementing bike networks and policies. We should instead be looking to policies more forward-thinking bike cities like Portland, Boulder, NYC, Culver City, Emeryville, etc. Public Works can also create a web page on preferred bike rack designs and bike locker facilities in the city to encourage businesses to install their own. That concludes the comment.
Okay, thank you. So the motion clear?
And can I add one more thing? So when it comes to, just to make sure we're being clear on this, when it comes to the parking minimums that a business has. So for example, I'm thinking of Kurt Hardware site where they had several people who were trying to go in there and they just couldn't squeeze out the right amount of parking to develop that particular land. But they could then add bike lanes, bike parking, so that they can satisfy that demand and not take up any parking space. So for example, if they need 20 to survive, but they can squeak out, the appropriate number of bike parking in somewhere, then they can just add that to their minimum.
Yeah, that's definitely, that's what LA City has. So it's not that they have to have it where the parking space is physically going to be, but it has to be, they do have the design standards, so it has to be enough space for the two bikes to be on it. And if there are multiple, then you have to make sure that there's distance enough so that the bikes can actually park in those spaces, but it doesn't require that it has to be on, in a parking space. But somebody could convert their parking space, and that gives them the opportunity,
Give it flexibility.
CVS may be interested, if they know that they don't have to have this full requirement, they may be interested in converting their bike parkings or their parking spaces for bike parking, if that's where it works best for them. But that's going to be up to that business on how they choose to do it.
Okay, all right.
So real quick, I want to actually add to the motion as well, the parking ratio, parking spots to bikes 4-to-1, correct?
In LA City.
In LA City. For the coastal zone, I believe it's 6-to-1.
That they have accepted 6-to-1, I think, in certain LCPs. Yeah.
So I like to make sure we include the coastal zone.
Whoa. We have a certified LCP, right? So we do. We're going to amend that. We're going to go back.
Oh, yeah, an LCP amendment would have to eventually be processed. I mean, that's the one thing. This direction really is to explore these various options.
Okay, right.
For us to implement this via ordinance, Artesia may be our first test case because we're coming back with the shared parking analysis, which is actually, we're studying environmentally the impacts of those changes. So we might be able to move more quickly there. But this to become a citywide effort, there's probably going to be some study implications here that may take some time for us to execute. So be aware. But if you want us to also analyze the ability to do that in the coastal zone, we can. It's just going to require conversations with coastal, and it's something we'll eventually want to do, I think, as part of an LCP proposed amendment potentially.
I'm fine. I don't necessarily want to set off the alarm bells or down the process with coastal yet, but I want part of the conversation. I imagine you guys are going to go to planning or public works or something, to start having these conversations. And I do want the coastal to be part of those conversations, not necessarily start going down this path with coastal. Don't need to include that work. Want to get it going on Artesia and some other places wise, but I want to make sure that we're also into the ratio of 4-1 because coastal is 6-1. So are we fine with 4-1?
Was that ratio even part of the
Not do
motion?
6-1.
I thought,
I'm ready to decide that later.
yeah, we can, that ratio wasn't part of the motion.
I would say go to 6-1, make it standard to coastal. So
And we're studying all these things. So yeah, we'll study the 10% incentive. We'll study, 6-1 coastal, ratio as an option as well. I mean, the goal here, I think, is really to use bike parking in lieu of vehicle parking as a means to allow for some level of development incentive, right? That's the goal. And we can evaluate both of those options and bring that information back. And how you ultimately execute those is going to be different in different areas, for sure. Artesia being the one where we might be able to have the most immediate impact.
Okay.
I just remind everything in Redondo Beach west of Pacific Coast Highway is in the coastal zone. It's part of our local coastal program. And any changes got to go to the coastal.
There's an amendment.
And that can open a whole, we never know, but.
Just
cognizant of that.
And we may have to process an LCP amendment depending on how they evaluate our proposal for dining decks down in the village. If they may tell us that we should amend our coastal program as opposed to having a coastal development permit issued specifically for that project. So those are conversations we'll be having with them. We will be having some parking discussions with coastal in general.
And on your motion, can I just make one more plea for the covered parking? And because here's kind of, I'm not sure how it would apply to the developmental standards that we're kind of going for, and I'm not sure how we would fit this into the incentive program. But here's the vision of it, is that they have the covered parking, they could put some solar panels on top of it and actually have a plug there that people can plug their bike into. I think that might be kind of forward thinking, but I think it's just something we might want to develop into some kind of a design standard as a possibility, because especially if you're doing LTN and you're doing a true regional network, and people are coming from far away, then that would be very beneficial to be able to have a place where they can plug in their bike. For example, my e-bike, which is pedal assist, by the way, not just sitting there. But anyway,
You should never need a charge then, you'll be fine.
So I don't, because when I pedal, I don't actually, I've never had to go, never be anywhere, go far enough away where I need to plug it in. But maybe there will be other people that do. So it's just a thought.
Yeah, I think it's a design standard, and certain sites are going to lend themselves more, specifically to it than others, depending on location. And the goal is, where possible, you try to incorporate shade and electrical charging if possible.
Right. So just a thought on that, because I really like to incorporate that in just in our discussion when it comes back. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a motion and a second?
Yep. And I love, I agree.
You incorporate that?
All perfectly clear.
We ready for a vote?
Yep.
Yeah.
Councilmember Narenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath. Aye. Councilmember Obaji absent. Councilmember Imdy.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Brandy. All right. City manager item.
Yeah, just one tonight. Pat covered it briefly. Want to say, just reiterate that we did activate a couple of cooling centers this weekend at Perry Park. They were actually fairly well attended. We had, I think, 16 on the first day on Sunday, and then we had 21 yesterday. So quite a few folks taking advantage of it. Big thanks to Michelle Pinedo, our recreation supervisor, who was part of sort of coordinating staffing and having the place supplied. Public Works crew, obviously, fire for taking the lead and really jumping into what turned out to be not only a good implementation, but a great emergency preparedness exercise, which is something that we're really trying to focus on and have fire be the lead on, and bring about broader citywide training to these types of activities. So it was a good weekend for a couple of reasons, and we were happy that we were able to provide a little bit of relief for our residents up there. That's all I've got tonight.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mike, and thanks for the response to big heat wave. Gosh, got it in the 90s. But yeah, it's important. It's good. A lot of people use it. So. Okay, Mayor and Council items. P1, discussion possible action regarding amendment to the Redondo Municipal Code pertaining to campaign finance and contracting for investigation services for alleged campaign finance reporting violations. So this is just about enforcement, as I read this, and not necessarily about the ordinance itself, or am I wrong? Do you want to give a brief?
I'll go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. So we brought this in April, and this is related to the changes that the mayor had requested regarding on the ordinance, changes related to adding the city clerk, the city attorney, and the city treasurer for the limited contributions, campaign contributions. Also, we finally found an investigator. Took a long time. There's really hardly any investigators out there related to doing campaign financing. And also regarding the contract, there's some concerns regarding the liability issue. And the city insurance would not cover any settlement. And also, well, the city attorney and I do not recommend the approval of the engagement letter. And I guess at this point, any questions? And then I don't know if, I think the city attorney can also, you can ask him questions too.
Are there any public comments about this? I would
I have
imagine.
none at this point.
Get that.
There's one typo in here.
Okay.
It's just under section 2-2.304. The word, it says sever at 700. This is like halfway through the paragraph.
Okay. Oh, yeah, right, I see it.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Okay, is there any questions or comments from the council?
What is it, you said that you don't recommend? What was that?
Just the engagement letter due to the liability. I think the attorney can speak on that.
Well, that's what jumped out at me. So could you guys kind of
Can you expand on that,
Maybe
please?
Mike?
Yeah, there aren't a lot of people that do this. So the clerk looked a long time. And they wouldn't agree to our standard indemnification language. They think that this is fraught with the possibility of getting sued.
They being this one company.
Correct. And when we checked with our JPA that provides insurance beyond the self-insured retention of $500,000, they indicated although we'd be covered for negligence, we wouldn't be covered for any intentional act of their employees or in gross negligence. And so the city would be liable for the actions of an employee of an independent contractor. There's an additional thing that's in the contract which normally makes sense, which is a contract cap. But that also would be problematic because if they needed to exceed the cap to complete an investigation, you can imagine if it were a council person or a council person's opponent that
Violated some limit.
well, it might be difficult to get 4 votes, in a budget year. And so, I still think you'd be better off in eliminating the city ordinance. And now that the state, which they didn't have at the time the council passed this, they have a state law that applies to everyone. The FPPC would enforce it, so there'd be 0 liability. It also has the benefit that they could, for lesser but technical violations, they could do it as an administrative fine. For a truly egregious violation, they could refer it to the city attorney's office for prosecution. Ours is a criminal violation. And so prosecution is the only option. If there's a violation, there's a problem by including the city attorney's position in the ordinance, and that was part of the amendment. I don't recall it being the mayor. I recall it being the mayor pro tem, which at the time was Councilman Obaji. By including right now, the city attorney, city clerk, city treasurer positions are all, and state and the school board are all covered by the state ordinance. By including the city attorney, there's a conflict for a future city attorney in any violation involving them or one of their opponents. It's hard to know. There are potential, and I'm leaving it up to the future city attorney because we'll have to see what happens with the Charter Review Committee and the election. But the DA won't, as I've mentioned, they wouldn't in the past when there was a Torrance violation that the FPPC thought was egregious, sent it for prosecution. They're an appointed city attorney, couldn't do prosecution. He referred it to the DA. The DA correctly said, we don't have jurisdiction to prosecute municipal code violations. If we relied on the state law, that issue doesn't, if it's a future city attorney or his opponent or her opponent, then they can refer that to the DA for prosecution. And then finally, there's been a fairly recent Supreme Court decision that I attached to, as an attachment to this item. It puts a couple of provisions at risk. You have caps on the amount that a candidate can lend himself or herself. And this case involves Senator Cruz. He lent himself $260,000. You were only allowed to collect. There was a time limit from when you could collect that amount. And the Supreme Court said that that was a violation of the First Amendment. It's not exactly on point, but they're strongly given an indication that if you limit the candidate's ability to lend himself money or to get it paid back, that may run afoul of the First Amendment. And one of the amendments that this council directed us to prepare was you're shortening the time in which you can repay a loan from or collect money from the post-election from 6 months to 3 months. And so we wanted to make you aware of that, given that the council created these amendments in opposition to what was recommended by my office and still recommended by the clerk's office and by the city manager's office at the time. So I wanted to make you aware of that. And I think that's everything in terms of making you aware of the issues.
Let me just ask a couple of questions quick. So things have changed since we made this direction. And Redondo Beach is alone. You know, there's other cities and they've already had things implemented that are now basically not becoming null and void, but making things very complicated at least. I don't even know what to ask. I mean, given all this changes and stuff, I mean, and it says discussion of possible action regarding amendment to the Redondo Municipal Code pertaining to campaign finance and contracting for investigation services for alleged campaign finance reporting violations introduced by title. I mean, are we talking about like everything here, Mike?
Yeah, so you remember campaign ordinance didn't get enforced because there wasn't anyone to do investigation, and the previous city manager and the clerk a year ago sent a budget response report saying why the clerk couldn't do it. We've had discussions about why the police don't feel comfortable getting involved. And I don't know what your conversations were individually with the previous city manager. And so the direction was, hey, find someone from the council to find someone to do it. The clerk didn't find a lot of people willing to do it.
That's all we found.
So, and then
It's not many.
The council also gave direction to amend the ordinance to include the other offices, to change the amount, to shorten the.
So we can do anything tonight from blow this whole thing up, blow it off, or.
And my recommendation stays the same. Give us direction to repeal the ordinance and specifically rely on the state ordinance, which the FPPC will investigate. And part
That's your recommendation.
Yeah, and part of the problem was the FPPC subsequent to the council passing it, notified the clerk that because of changes in state law, they're no longer investigating municipal code ordinances. They are charged with investigating state law, state campaign violations. So that remains my a recommendation, but I wanted to prepare all the modifications, and Ms. Martin's prepared the modifications to the ordinance in keeping with the council direction, and the clerk found the person, but there are those problems with, we'd be on the hook for someone we don't control.
I'll just say, given everything, my opinion has changed, and I really think we ought to rely on the state and not get involved in this. It's very complicated, and it's going to be a mess. It was probably a good idea at the time. Things have changed, and things have changed. That's just my opinion. So anyway, Councilmember Lowenstein.
Yeah, so the current contribution limits are $1,200 for a council candidate, and based on this, and $2,700 for clerk, attorney, well, we're not sure, attorney, right? Treasurer.
Well, attorney could do it, but just no one can enforce it.
Right, school board member and mayor. The state contribution limits are $4,900.
Correct.
So that's almost 4 times the amount for a council member and almost twice the amount for everyone else. I don't mind looking at the state statute, but it's really watering this down to the point where it's almost like, anybody can come in and give $4,900 to people. I don't know. It's the enforcement part that's the hard part, really. It's not, but it's going back to where we were. It really is. That's the only concern I have is it's going back to where we were in the Wild West mentality. The other thing is if the DA decides not to prosecute, we are where we're at, right? So I don't know. It's a really tough one.
Well, the DA would only prosecute if there's violation. If there's a conflict. So the city attorney will still prosecute.
Based on the state.
Yeah, so an elected city attorney, now that changes if it becomes an appointed city attorney. But as I discussed originally, there's a specific section of state law that allows an elected city attorney as well as a DA to prosecute violations of the Fair Political Practices Act.
And then the penalty would be determined by?
Well, if it's a misdemeanor, it would be determined by a court of law and the city attorney's office.
But not the FPPC.
Well, only if they don't go to criminal prosecution, if they do an administrative fine. So that is the risk, but that is a lower, because you're actually increasing the prosecution, the penalty, because you're doubling the fine, which was at the time Councilmember Narenheim, now Mayor Pro Tem Narenheim, that was his suggestion.
What was it, 1,000 before?
Yeah, 6 months and it's 1,000.
Now it's 2,000.
It's 6 months in jail or 2,000. So it's just, the problem is it's a higher amount.
Yeah.
But if it's not going to get enforced, or it's going to get enforced at great risk to the city.
Yeah.
There's no perfect way. So you have all the choices before you. I just think
$4,900 is a lot, but it doesn't surprise me that a state assembly and state senate would pass something that high, because that's
elections. It's you know me, if a rule isn't going to be enforced, there isn't a rule. Now, so
why do it, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. All right.
Councilmember Horvath. Oh, yeah, it's funny, when I read the staff report, I saw that I voted yes on bringing this forward, and I had to go check my notes because I thought it had to be an error, because I was reading through all this and I'm like, I don't agree with any of this, so why did I vote for it? I think we're fine where we're at. The only thing I could or would be willing to potentially support is, as it relates to city council candidates, just fixing that CPI rounding. Other than that, I don't really see the need to change the limit for council candidates. I don't see the need to change anything for clerk, attorney, treasurer, school board members, and mayor. I would just leave that as is. I don't even know why we need to bring in some type of prosecution thing. I'm not really convinced that anybody here is in violation of that, or that there's some widespread issue here in the city, or has been, at least in the time I've been around. So I would just say keep it as is, if that makes it easiest.
Well, the only problem with that is because no one was investigating it. And so no one will continue to investigate it unless, so you either need someone to do it, and that has the risk of.
That's the question, Mike. Do you have to have somebody? I mean, couldn't somebody just go, hey, look, it exceeded.
Okay.
Violated, but then nothing happens.
The problem is we can't interview anybody. And every time before we filing a criminal charge, even a misdemeanor, is an important thing. And I don't take that lightly. And I want to have, both sides explain, but I can't interview them. I don't have city attorneys, investigators. And
county does it all day long. What? It's on the books, but we don't have the manpower to enforce it.
Okay, well, but you've heard a lot, like, what happened? Nothing's going on. And my frustration is, well, the city attorney's not doing anything. Well, no one's investigating it. We can't investigate it. So, I think a higher limit that's investigated and enforced is better, but we don't have to have that. But I do think, even if you don't amend the ordinance, you have to decide who's going to enforce this. You could decide not to hire someone, and you could direct the city manager, hey, find one of your employees. It could be police department, it could be whomever else. But the problem with that, as we've discussed, we have a really good police department that's respected throughout our community. And as soon as you start involving them in politics with prosecution combined, that puts it at risk. I always use the phrase that a friend who's a judge, and I apply it to city attorney, with every decision you make one temporary friend and one permanent enemy, because people personalize it. And something like that is very personal. So I don't think where we are with nobody investigating it, why have that law in the books? Because it's going to penalize people who want to follow the law and reward people that are going to dare you to stop them. So I think that's probably the worst. I still favor the higher limits that an independent party can investigate, and that even if it involves the city attorney, the DA can take, and that, I didn't see that included in there. Misdemeanors we're not prosecuting. But even if they did, the city attorney could handle every other office.
And I don't disagree with anything you're saying. The point of passing the campaign finance rules was to take away this idea that people were rampantly abusing, a system that had no limits at that point, right? Because the state law didn't exist with those limits of $4,900 at that point. And since I'm a rule follower when it comes to this stuff, I don't really think about the potential people out there that could, want to take advantage of it and realize that there's no enforcement issue. I would hope that those people don't exist, but then I realize that's a completely naive thought. So, I don't know. I'm willing to hear what everybody else has to say, but I could go either way. I feel like we spent an enormous amount of time twice in the past 5 years trying to get to where we are, and undoing it just, makes me want to go, what a waste of time. So, but as it relates to like tweaking what's there already, I'm not interested. So I'm just letting everybody know.
Anybody else?
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say this right now. I'm beyond infuriated right now from what I'm hearing. We have the city attorney, he's going over policy, not legal aspects. We have Culver City, we have Hermosa Beach, they have campaign finance limits, laws, numbers, amounts. To hear that the police department is not going to even-handedly apply the law to elected officials because of the mere possibility of an inability to properly prosecute or even investigate something is beyond comprehension for me. Let me give you a perfect example why it's so ridiculous. Culver City Council directly hires their police chief. Now, if you want to talk about a conflict of interest, look at Culver City. The city council hires their own police chief. Hermosa Beach has a $250 limit. LA City has a limit. Culver City has a limit. All of these other cities have a limit for a reason. And we're not even anywhere near what they have. They have $250, $200 limits, and so on and so forth. LA City has an ethics commission. Want to create an ethics commission? Create some possibilities, do an ethics commission. That's fine. We can go down this path. But to hear even the mere mention for something we worked on for so hard, for so many years now, to just get rid of it and go to the FPPC is so beyond absurd. Someone who's been sued by some maliciously and frivolously by two shills for a sham action. I'm going to tell you exactly the process for the FPPC. My lawyer, my phenomenal lawyer, eviscerated the former head of the FPPC. The former head of the FPPC on the witness stand. She didn't know the difference between a 460 and a 410. Came back next day, had it all lined up, but then couldn't answer all the other random questions that we had for her on the FPPC laws and everything that they had. So to go one step further, during the sham action which we were defending, the Measure C, the No on Measure C campaign. I'll give you a little hint on that. Anyone that has an elected official up here, anyone who's run a campaign, knows that you shall have a treasurer on the campaign. Okay? It's right there in the paperwork. You shall have a treasurer. It could be the candidate, it could be someone different, a professional person, volunteer, whoever it may be. Guess what? The No on Measure C campaign, we subpoenaed the treasurer for the No on Measure C campaign, fully supported by Center Cal, Redondo Beach Waterfront, Westport Capital, all those guys, that whole people. You know what the treasurer said when we subpoenaed her and brought her in for a deposition? She said, "Why am I here? That guy over there, Bradley Hertz, that's not my lawyer. I don't know who he is." We looked at and we brought out the 460s, 410s, said, "Is this your signature?" She said, "No, it's not my signature. I don't know what that, I wasn't the treasurer of the No on Measure C campaign. I don't know what you're talking about." So then we went to the FPPC and said, "Hey, listen, we have an honest subpoena, sworn testimony. The treasurer for the No on Measure C campaign, what did they spend? Over $500,000 to defeat our locally led initiative?" You know what they said? You know what they said? "It's not a violation. Sorry. Yeah, someone forged it. That's not our department." So
an assistant treasurer signed it.
Well, I will agree with you.
I'll say this. She had no idea what's going on. I am not going to leave anything in the hands of the FPPC. Absolutely not. There's still many open FPP investigations for many people. I'm going to leave it to our very capable police department and our own city attorney, whether it's you, the next one, whoever it may be. The law shall be applied through a blindfold process, even-handedly. I don't care if it's campaign. I don't care what statement we're at. Other cities are able to do it. LA City, Hermosa, Culver City, they all have limits, nowhere near the limits that we have. I am 100% for passing the amendments that we have here. We worked so hard to amendments. I'm still not happy. I don't believe, for instance, that we should be able to collect money on behalf of somebody or a candidate should be able to collect money 3 months, 2 months later after the election is done, because that is just ripe for if they've gone in debt for other weird campaign issues going on. I'll just tell you that if we don't have the votes tonight to pass this, I will Brown Act with Councilmember Obaji and bring this back to make sure that we do pass this. And to work out, I will personally call other cities, Culver City, Hermosa, LA City, other places I could see what they do for enforcement. I don't see how it could be so hard. I don't understand how somebody can just go to our police department, go to code enforcement, go to police department, file a simple police report and say, this is what I witnessed, whether it's, you know what? In fact, let me go one step further. As the incoming president for ICA, at the time I was the treasurer, I found somebody that embezzled money out of 501c3 I was on the board of. What did we do? We walked into the sheriff's department and we said, we'd like to file a police report or sheriff's report. It happened in your jurisdiction. We did our background. We came up with all the information. They took the report, they took the information, then they did an investigation in the sheriff's department, and they have now since followed up with charges for said person. And so there's no reason why that same process can't happen by our very professional police department to take a police report and forward that along, and then we can actually create, if we need to, an ethics commission or see what Hermosa or Culver City does when it comes to enforcement. I just don't see it. We work too hard. We have independent elections. We have fought for independent elections here in Redondo Beach. And it's something that it's worth preserving. FEPC is a state organization. And as we see with the power plant and many other state organizations, we aren't going to be getting very far anywhere. So that's my plan moving forward. If we don't have the votes to update this, I will be bringing this back and I'll be talking with Councilmember Abaji.
I don't think it's a good idea to have a vote tonight anyway without Councilmember Abaji here. There's 5 of us.
That's actually not a good, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, we should bring it back.
You can make a motion to continue if you want.
May I speak first? Because every time you don't like a legal advice, you think it's policy. And the first thing I said was, I don't know what conversations you had with the previous city manager. And I said that you could talk to your city manager and give him direction as to that someone could enforce this. You still haven't addressed the issue of whether it's constitutional as written. You still haven't addressed who's going to prosecute this. And for having worked so hard on it, you did nothing for a year after you asked for the budget response report and no one was enforcing it, and you did nothing with it in the budget. So these are legal issues. You have the ability to direct them. Your police department, I'm just telling you, doesn't want to do that, doesn't want to be sucked into it. You can give the direction to the city manager to find someone to do it, and we stand ready to enforce it. The 501c3 is completely different, and we've done that multiple times in Redondo with various organizations where 501c3 treasurers have embezzled. That has nothing to do with it. So I would appreciate it if you'd actually address the issues that I highlighted to you, like, are we going to, like, do you, does our ordinance that you directed, does it violate the Supreme Court decision in Cruz? Is it better to move it in the opposite direction? Do you have the limit on what people can lend themselves? It's up to you. I brought that up. I'm just letting you know because collectively you have 0 months in prosecution. This is my 35th year. You can do it. There's no perfect response. I don't particularly like state agencies either, but there's liability with this contract. If you want to direct the city manager to have someone to do it, then great. We have someone to investigate it. If you include the city attorney, I don't know who's going to, a future city, who's going to handle that case. And if you want to move it on, that's entirely up to you.
Why do you say we have 0 months? What does that mean? Did I mishear you?
Well, none of you, by background, are involved with prosecution, enforcement. And so I'm advising you.
I thought we had some sort of timeline.
Oh, no. You've got time. I'm just saying, like, because you don't like it. Anyways, I know you're passionate. I know you're passionate, but you're not addressing the legal.
let me talk just for a second, you guys, because this is really, look, Councilmember Nierenheim and I have both been sued in private enforcement actions for violations of FPPC. It's a long story and I don't need to get into it. So it's a very sensitive issue. But this stuff is very sensitive to pretty much everybody. I mean, they don't want money controlling our elections. And so on the other hand, enforcement, and it all just gets into a can of worms, and the state changes laws and the Supreme Court decisions come down. It's very complicated. And I'm not saying for limits. I mean, as Councilmember Nierenheim pointed out, I mean, it kind of works over there. You don't see people just writing $10,000 checks or $5,000 checks because, well, it's a $250 limit.
But the question I have is, do they enforce it? We've been prosecutors.
I know that's the question.
We've been prosecutors in Hermosa.
I don't think Hermosa's, I don't know what they're doing over there.
We haven't gotten
And what
a single
percentage of cities in California even have these limits on their local?
Well, you had that when we started that. We printed off remember we had that book. We printed off, I had a assistant who would print it off every campaign finance and put it in a book for you all, and you were surprised on what the amounts were. That's not the issue. The current ordinance is fine. You need someone to prosecute it. It could be you hire somebody and take the liability risk and take the risk that it will become politicized if they go forward. Or you can direct the city manager, hey, we want you to find somebody to investigate that. Those are both perfectly acceptable suggestions.
Okay, so this is complicated.
Ordinance.
Table it.
I think we should continue it and further discuss it and think about it and get everybody here. And I don't think this is a good time for us to be deciding this right now, frankly. So that's just my opinion. You guys make whatever.
No, I agree.
I just don't understand why you need, you've got the same votes. If you're, at first, the mayor said he was going one way, and then he spoke and he went the other way. And I thought you were going with the mayor. And so now he's spoken.
I'm not sure where I am.
But it's 2-2.
Honestly.
So even if it's 2-2, which I don't know, I think based on what he said, even if it is 2-2, you got the mayor to break the tie. I mean.
We shouldn't be this divided on it. And Councilmember Rabaji should be here. We should all be here because everybody has a stake in this. I would think.
Things are changing. I mean, things have changed.
Yeah.
Things have changed.
Things have not changed so dramatically that we need to scrap our ordinance. What the state has is $4,900. That's ridiculous for a local race like ours. I raised $10,000 or $11,000 in my last race.
It just takes 2 check writers. That's it.
And that's the point.
Well, there's 3 of us here that are saying not to scrap it. I'm saying not to change it.
So we worked very hard on getting these updates here. I think in order to get, we're not going to have the time to get this in place, even if it passes today with a first reading, it would be, second reading would be next time. So anyways, I will make a motion to table this discussion into the, you want to do the 20th or the 4th? First meeting of the,
I think the first.
Mr. City Manager, what does the 20th look like and the 4th look like?
20th is busy.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to table this item to the 4th. We have Councilmember Rabaji here. He was very key to this portion of it. I will roll up my sleeves and do work on this, just like I did for the sequel ordinance, updating the sequel ordinance amongst many other things and the special election. More than happy to do that to make sure it gets done. And I will look at other cities and find out what other cities do and with their enforcement. So my motion will be to table this to October 4th meeting. So we have Councilmember Rabaji here.
I think it's a good idea.
Any more public comment?
I haven't had any public comment yet.
No public comment. Thank you.
So if it goes to October 4th, nominations start November 14th.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Nierenheim?
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein?
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath? Nope. Councilmember MD?
No.
Okay, I'll break the tie to continue to October 4th.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Alrighty then. All right, mayor and council referrals to staff. Councilmember Narenheim.
Let me check here. I know I had some stuff.
Just a reminder, everybody, we are not meeting next Tuesday. Our next meeting will be the 20th.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. Parking study for the Riviera Village and other areas. Where are we with that?
I think we're close. I think that's coming back fairly soon. I'll find the date for you and let you know. I think that's within striking distance.
Okay, perfect. I'd like to agendize a conversation for the council to either support or oppose Measure E. It could be a brief conversation. I think the September 20th meeting. We've done this with other ballot measures, so.
Can we do that?
It doesn't require it doesn't require a staff report, actually.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
You can't spend any resources. You can't.
We can educate and we can take it up.
Right, and you have to be very careful about educating.
That's what I'm worried about.
And that's changed a lot. And a previous city manager and I had very different opinion, and the Supreme Court has since sided with my opinion. So, but at a public meeting, when you're taking an official position on things, that's mine.
Okay.
Sending out resources, that may be a problem.
We don't need much of that.
No, it'll be a simple, very simple staff report.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Lawrence?
Yeah, I'd like to have a discussion on e-bikes.
In what way?
When? I don't know.
Can we, let's do this.
What kind of discussion, though?
Do you mind me making a suggestion with that?
Well, it depends what it is, but yes, go ahead.
Strategic plans coming back when we finally get all the items in there.
Well,
We fit it in.
I'm glad you reminded me earlier because it's something we've been wanting to talk about. I have other people asking me, when are you going to have a discussion on e-bikes? I've nearly been run over several times.
So you're talking about sort of rules and regulations associated with e-bike use and operation in the city.
Correct.
Talking about.
What are you talking about?
What's that?
Are you talking about enforcement?
Are you trying to?
No, I'm not talking about enforcement. I just want to discuss on this.
You're going down back ways, running stop signs and.
Well, if nobody wants to have it, don't vote for it, I guess, but.
No, I'm serious.
I know
What's
what
the discussion?
you're
Is it
saying.
an ordinance? Is it that you want to promote safety? Is it that you want, what kind of a?
Well, it would
discussion
be
do you
interesting to
want?
know if we can or can't enforce it. And then the second thing is, what is our policy on it? Can they use bike lanes? Can they not? Those kind of things. So I know I'm opening a can of worms. It doesn't have to be right away, but maybe in the next few months.
I mean, honestly, isn't it kind of a state?
Yeah, we're following the state model right now. I mean, we could talk about what that is.
That's.
Well, I was going to ask, do you want the number
How
of
about a
tickets?
rehash
Do
of
you
what
want
state
the
law is?
number of tickets?
We have written quite a few citations of late.
So I wasn't being facetious.
No,
It's
I get it.
Like, these are the rules and here's how much enforcement we've done.
Okay, how about state law and what we've done for enforcement? Just to recap.
We wrote 4 cites on opening
Yeah.
day to the high school students.
I honestly don't know what state law is.
We did.
on this.
To Todd's point, it may be good because then we'll have the information to carry back to the people who do keep asking.
Yeah.
Why can't the city do more?
We can have that conversation. How eager are you?
Oh, I think it can be a couple months from now.
Okay.
It's fine. We've got so many other things in our.
Maybe it's a holiday conversation. I don't know.
You mean like a special meeting is what you're talking about?
No,
Or
no
right
special
before
meeting for
Christmas?
that,
Just
no.
good idea.
Might be a good time.
December
Before
26th.
buys it for their kids.
Christmas, yes.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah. Cancel your orders.
I guess so, November, December timeframe.
Okay.
Place a special tax on e-bikes?
I'm not raising taxes.
No, I'm just joking.
You're trying to get
Redondo
the rebate
Beach.
money? Is that what you're trying to get?
Okay, Councilmember Horvath.
Nothing.
Councilmember Ramsey.
Sometimes there's rebate money for those.
It's more of a question, and I think I know the answer, but people are, I dutifully told everybody about the no watering for 2 weeks. And there's a concern that only half the people got the information, which my response is, well, you should be on my email distribution then. But anyway, so why didn't the city plaster the place with flyers?
We are not a water utility, so that's the first thing. People are receiving information from the city of Manhattan Beach. People forget city of Manhattan Beach is actually a water utility. We are happy to post any resource associated with the closure, but that's really Cal Water's responsibility to notify its users on what rules are and do not apply over this 2-week period. It's unclear a little bit to us even. They talk about institutional prohibition, they don't really define it. We haven't received much in the way of direct communication from Cal Water's representatives on this closure. It's not way behind. It's not super, it literally started today.
It did?
So we're happy to post and market whatever materials out there, but we have not been pushed even by our Cal Water partners on this. So I'm hesitant to tell our residents what to do with their watering when we're not the gatekeeper of that use.
Okay.
Plus, we want to enforce it.
And we are definitely not the water police, I can promise you that.
And that has been my answer to people that have been upset about it. I said, here's the information, do what you want with that.
Not a water utility. This is the one area where sometimes I'm grateful we're not the full service that comes with being a water utility.
Oh, yeah.
Not a great time to be a water utility.
All right, awesome, thanks.
All righty.
Motion to adjourn.
Ready to adjourn.
Until September 20th.
That was in a motion by the mayor. Somebody make a motion.
I'll second.
No, Corbett did.
Oh, did you? I'm sorry.
No, motion
I
didn't.
made the motion.
Roll call
Okay.
vote.
Any objection?
No.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.